Welcome to the main meeting of the Children and Young People and Lifelong Learning Committee. Before we start, can I just raise a couple of issues? One is behind us, or behind you, we have coaches and players who represented Dumfries and Galloway in the Special Olympics World Games in Abu Dhabi in March and achieved great things. So welcome and thanks for all you've done representing our region. Thank you. And I think, Katie, you also want to highlight a young athlete who's achieving great things as well.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Yes, I just wanted to raise the fact that here in Dumfries and Galloway we have a young person who is just in second year at high school who's been nominated and is a finalist as a young achiever for Cycling UK Award and has been invited down to London for the finals. And I just think it's a fantastic inspiration to some of our young children, and he has in fact inspired my own son to start cycling the nearly 8 miles to school every day. So I would just like to congratulate Robin Alderslow and ask that we as a committee give our thanks to him for being such an inspiration.
Okay. Before we start again, I think, Lucy, you've raised an issue with Ronnie. Have you actually informed governance that you're sitting in the committee?
Yeah, about 2 weeks ago.
Okay, I haven't received any notification of this.
That's not my issue, that's a governance issue then.
Okay, can we pause while Lucy checks it? Ian?
Just if you don't mind, I mean, I think it's absolutely correct because of what happened internally with the Conservative group, there was an extra place, and I know John Chatlis is currently off this, so I think Ronnie, as part of that non-aligned group, is a natural replacement for that, so I think it's correct.
Thank you, I've just received confirmation now.
So you believe me then, is that what you're saying?
Okay, so moving on to the agenda. Item 1, Sederunt and apologies. Lucy?
We have 24 members present, and so far I have received apologies from Sam Scobie.
Declarations of interest?
I thought I'd handed in apologies for Councillor Justy. Is that what you said?
Oh, noted, thank you.
Declarations of interest? None? Okay, so if we move to item 3 on page 9, minutes of the previous meeting of Tuesday the 26th of March 2019. Can we approve those? Thank you. So moving to agenda item 4 on page 15, Northwest Community Campus Update. The report looks at some of the background to the closure of the Northwest Community Campus in September, the leadership and management of the return to NWCC, support which was organised for students, communication and engagement with stakeholders, progress with the building, library plans and plans for the return to NWCC. Members are asked to note the update, and we have Barry Graham and Paul McCulloch to speak to the report. Is there anything you want to add? Is there anything you want to add?
Sorry about that. Nothing specific, but just to say that the engagement that really started way back in September has continued, you know, where we've tried to include as many different interested parties in our consultation. I think that has been a sort of a strength of the process in rebuilding the trust of the community, and it's been very positive, the work of all different parts of the council. So it's not just about education or property and architectural services, it's about lots of different parts of the council working together, you know, to make sure that the building's ready, and we're very positive about where we are. We've got, on the 3rd of June, we've got the secondary coming back in. We have an open evening tonight. As I said, very positive, and just working towards that date to make sure we get the last group back into the building.
Thanks, Barry. Members? David?
Thanks, Chair. It's just in reading this paper and knowing what the staff and pupils have gone through in the last year since the community campus opened and closed, I think I would like to put on record my thanks to everyone involved for the amount of work and the stress and strain that they were put under over that period of time. And I think, as I say, I'd like to put my thanks on record for all the good work they've done.
Ronnie?
Yeah, I think David's absolutely right, and I've had lots and lots of positive comments and the change in culture about information as well. But on another matter, in the report, it's obviously, we're still waiting on a report regarding an inquiry into the faults, and I just wonder if you had any progress on that. And also, since pupils have moved back in, which on a staged basis, I think that's correct, the way it's been done, has there been any other faults discovered? Has there been any other issues that's raised its head since that's happened? And, I haven't heard any, but just to reassure people.
Paul?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. So to answer your first question, in terms of the inquiry recommendations in the report, the report that's been undertaken by GLM on behalf of SFT, that was expected last month. My understanding there's been a bit of a delay in the finalisation of that report, so I understand it's to be available next week, and we'll keep you updated on that as we go forward. With regards to faults, I mean, all buildings have snags and snagging items. We found a few minor things as we've went forward. A wee issue with some suspended ceiling tiles that has been addressed. General painting and other minor issues that are quite normal in terms of any sort of building opening process. So what we've done is we've left a team of staff, dedicated staff, property architectural services staff on site. And as these wee issues crop up, we're dealing with them as and when. So I think, Barry, that the staff have quite welcomed that approach to make sure that as we go into any new building, we're all joined up.
Yeah, I think staff do appreciate that we're there if they've come to us with any concerns or any reasonable requests, that we're able to look at them and respond positively in most cases. And I think that's really helped. Yeah, with the nursery, with the primary and with Langlands, and it is helping right now with the secondary as we work towards next Monday.
Ronnie?
As I've said, I've had lots and lots of positive comments, and it's in the reassurance that people are on site. I didn't expect miracles. I expected one or two minor faults to happen, but I'm reassured, I think, that the minor faults that didn't cause any hassle.
Ian?
Thank you, Chair. First, I'd like to welcome Colin back as well. It's really good to see him back up at the top table. Do you think recognise that? I think just expanding on the points that Ronnie's touched on there, if you don't mind. So what I've heard in the background is that potentially, going back to the ceiling tiles, I suppose, that there was a bill, there may be some soundproofing, maybe was additional to it. So just, could you maybe explain that a bit further, Paul, I wonder? So it's probably 3 points I'm thinking of, just to touch on, and maybe this is something we could expand on further away from the committee. So the first one, what was actually behind that, the soundproofing, what actually happened there, what was the cause? Was there any real risk, I think, to any of the pupils, teachers, so on and so forth? The layout of the library, so just try to get an understanding of that. How does that work operationally? Will it become a wider, will it just remain a library, or will it, like, so I suppose in RNDLS in particular, what I did pick up is that we've made them into community customer service centres as well. So is that the intention for the North West Community Campus? I'm not just sure in regards to that. And I think, Chair, we made an agreement, I think we made a decision that would support the staff emotionally and so on and so forth as we went through. I just wondered what, in progress in regards to that, I think it's maybe a little bit of mention. So when it comes to that, has that been taken up with staff? Is it something we've been implementing, just to try and get an understanding? Just 3 points, and maybe probably want to pick up some stuff away from committee as well, Chair.
Okay, to answer your first question in terms of the ceiling tiles, there were some ceiling tiles showing sign of deflection in the one of the rooms, home economic rooms. So as a precautionary measure, they were taken down and it was investigated. What was found is that the tiles were changed from normal tiles to acoustic tiles, and that was to dampen the sound between the ventilation system that's contained within the void and the room itself. So what was found there was that as part of that work, a couple of the sort of ceiling wires had not been reattached. So very correctly, we did what we did. It's something that we do par for the course. That's been remedied, but notwithstanding that, we then went back and rechecked again for the third time, just to make sure that the whole rest of the school was done. So I'm very happy that all that work is now complete. With regards to the library layout, Barry?
The library, there's a working group that's looking at the library and deciding on how to actually best make sure that the library is fit for purpose, and to make sure that it is a library for the 21st century, that it's not just probably what we'd all have recognised 30, 40 years ago with just about books. It's got to be more than that. I think it's James Cox that's leading that group, and he's trying to link with the community to make sure that it is very much a working library where the whole community is encouraged to make use of it. I think in the past it wasn't well used, and we're obviously looking to try and make some changes to encourage more people to go into the library. In terms of support for staff, we have an educational psychologist that comes in every week. She's actually in twice this week, and there are opportunities for staff to go along and speak to that person. She also does a thing which is a walk around the building, so it doesn't mean that they've got to sort of go to a certain office and meet with her, just to bump into people and to see if she feels that they require any extra support. And I'm very positive about that approach. It's just a little bit different, but I think when the primary moved in, the primary staff were very positive about that kind of support. There's extra opening times so that staff can go in, and like this week it's open to 8 o'clock every night, and it's open at times on Saturday morning as well. We have a working group that has met every week, so they were able to bring concerns to me, and we're able to address those concerns as well. So we're working with them very closely, because there's some staff, and understandably some staff have still got some worries, and so we just work with them every day to try and work through any particular difficulties that they have.
Thank you, Chair. So now it's good to hear the staff are being supported. So it'd be good to get the reassurance that everyone's getting followed through, that make sure everybody's being heard and being listened to. But I suppose the question I was trying to get for both Paul and Barry in regards to the library, it's more about, will there be a transition to a community service centre with that, or is it just got to be, like you say, a 21st century library that's trying to attract people? That's what I'm trying to, because other schools, community schools, they're saying like, okay, they've bit the bullet, so to speak, they've made that decision, they've expanded them. I just wondered, with the site layout, the floor plan and such like, would it fit that? Would it be something that would happen? Is it even on the radar for yourselves?
The vision for the library, for the library staff and for the whole community, I think they are looking to see how they can best make the use of that. I think that the idea of a library just being about books, I think we all realise that that's no longer the case, and what you've got to try and do is to have different services available to support the community, and it's like sometimes it's self-help, but sometimes it's more than that. But I suppose that's for the working group to finalise the details on that. I think we'd all hope it will be more than just a library in the sort of very traditional sense.
More speakers? Yeah, I think just in terms of the Northwest Community Campus, I think it will be a great asset to the community. It's a marvellous building, and the use will evolve over time anyway. Things change, and to echo what Ronnie and David said, we need to recognise the assistance all the staff, the pupils and their parents have given to the council throughout this unfortunate period, but hopefully it's got a very bright future, and we'll bring a further report back to committee once everything's back in place again. Okay? So can we move to recommendations? Members are asked to note progress since the report presented to the Children, Young People and Lifelong Learning Committee on the 26th of March 2019. Happy to note that? Thank you. Okay, moving on to item 5 on page 19, the Bridge Dumfries Learning Town. The purpose of this report is to provide members with an update on progress in respect of the bridge and for the potential for a cafe provider to operate from the bridge. Members are being asked to agree the preferred option in relation to procuring a cafe provider, these options being 1, commercial franchise, 2, social enterprise. And Colin, I think you want to add something to the report.
Thanks, Chair. Morning, members. It is good to be back, I think. Although this paper is primarily about the cafe, the Chair had asked me to say a few words, give some additional information that might reassure members around the fact that the developments at the bridge are in line with expectation for you. A couple of months ago, two things were going on in relation to the bridge which caused a bit of a risk of confusion. One was the preparation to ensure that the building, its equipment and the operating arrangements would see young people begin courses next week as part of the curriculum for the new timetable. The other item was the development of the interim trust board and the preparation for handover for management responsibility at a later date. It was fairly apparent, I felt, that those two activities running in tandem risked us falling between two stools, and therefore some clear water between the two was needed. The bridge has got a long future ahead of it, and it was really important to get each stage right in the development along the way. It's already been reported to this committee that initially the building would be run and operated as a council facility, but in terms of clarity, a clear time frame was needed. The sensible option seemed to be 1 calendar school year, with the aim to have a smooth and successful handover in the summer of 2020 to the bridge, to the trust, sorry. So, preparations for stage 1 has gone really well, with timetabling group ensuring that between networking opportunities at the bridge and other schools, our young people have a greatly increased choice on offer for their courses for next week, possibly second to none in the country. And it's reported also that 95% of all young people have got all of their first choices in terms of courses, which certainly I was a secondary head. I've never seen that in school before. So between the bridge and the other schools and the networking, that's been a very successful start, and the young people will be there next week. In addition to that, we are in preparation making sure that it's going to be quite easy for primary school pupils, for primary teachers to be able to visit the bridge, bring a class up and have a look at what goes on in the bridge in terms of seeing what their future might be. So very optimistic about the start, and I think in terms of stage 1, we really prioritised all of our work on that agenda. However, we are now able therefore to get motoring on stage 2, which is the development of the trust. We've got a meeting set up with a contact with expertise in this field, who will now develop further the constitution to deliver a satisfactorily clear operating framework between the council and the trust, and take steps to add to the trustees as well as support training. And we're confident that the year gap gives us sufficient time to get this absolutely right. I hope that's a helpful update, and I'm more than happy to send out a written briefing if that would help members too.
Yeah, I think a written briefing would be useful. David?
Hi, thanks, Chair. It's just the director said there about 95% of people are getting the courses. Is that where you're identifying specific courses that youngsters want, but there's no sufficient demand in each school, and you're going to supply them within the bridge? How many additional courses is that?
Okay, so as part of the briefing I can provide some numbers. I don't have them here in front of me. What I'm talking about first choices is quite often in a secondary school, pupils going into 4th, 5th or 6th year will see option choices and say, well, I would really like to have been able to do the following 6 or 7 subjects, and it turns out that they clash in different columns and they're not able to do so. Because of the opportunities right across the 4 schools and the bridge, almost all of the young people can get doing the 5, 6, 7 or 8 things they want to do every time, and that's the first choice agenda. In terms of the richness and additional courses that are on offer, there's really a fantastic difference from a couple of years ago, and I'll send that out as part of the briefing.
Jim?
Thanks, Chair. Has it been made clear to pupils elsewhere in Dumfries and Galloway that the option for low uptake subjects is available at the bridge?
Our intention here is to develop that agenda. I think what I said was it's a long game with the bridge. We could potentially end up, in the longer term where all advanced hires, for example, were delivered from the bridge through good IT. We've got the IT spokes and hub agenda that's going on at the moment. So whilst it may not be in the very first few weeks that's the opportunity that arises, that's an agenda that we're developing over the course of the year, and I would see young people across Dumfries and Galloway benefiting from that agenda.
George?
No, that was part of my question. It's what evolved it a wee bit further. And this has not been parochial. I think it's what you're doing with Dumfries Standing Town is an excellent example, and it should be a pilot for everybody else to learn to. Not so long ago we talked about East Region, West Region, all the rest of it, and whether or not kids from, for example, my school at Annan are able to go to the bridge. The similar opportunity should be made available to young people where there's not enough demand in their school, maybe, and I know it happens already, logistics being Lockerbie, Moffat, Langham and Annan, but it's making that as acceptable and logistically sensible as possible for the teachers, the kids and all the rest of it, because denying somebody modern studies, advanced higher, that could really hurt a young person's career options. And we also have acknowledged that some young people are not ready to go to another school. So it's fitting all these nuances together so that everybody gets the same opportunity. And I know it has to a step-by-step stage, but just to keep that front and centre of folks' minds.
Absolutely, and that's certainly the development over the next year. I think there are 3 issues that affect young people from out with Dumfries here. One is that the learning from the networking in Dumfries is being applied and used in other parts of the region, and therefore we know that there is networking going on across between other schools and other places. Secondly, if there is an opportunity for somebody to physically be able to come and attend the bridge through transport, that will be made available. But thirdly, I think you've hit the nail on the head in terms of the IT opportunity, particularly in really small bespoke courses, some advanced hires. It may be that where that was impossible to be delivered elsewhere, we can all benefit from that in due course.
Ivor?
Thank you, Chair. I'm sort of going to the paper rather than general. Cafe installation at 312. The first line there, members agreed at an ad hoc Bridge Educational Trust subcommittee. Could I ask what that refers to?
My understanding was that there was a trust subcommittee that was set up to talk about the establishment of the trust at very early stages, and within that early discussion there was the development of the cafe was part of that, and I guess originally there was some background discussion about synergies with the DG1 cafe installation and whether that was something that would be something that we would look at for the bridge as well. But at the early stage, that's kind of where that stops in terms of a commercial provider.
Who are the members? Because I've got another couple of questions I would like to ask afterwards, but I want to understand the members of the ad hoc sub. Who are those members?
I'm sorry, I'm not able to answer that question at this moment in time.
Here, are they elected members or are they council officers? Chair, the reason I'm asking, I am a member of that subcommittee and we have never taken that decision. There has been one meeting, I have the minute here, we agreed the, the delegations to the subcommittee and we agreed appointments to the trust. We have never taken that decision. So where does that statement come from?
That was something that I put in under advisement. I wasn't present at that particular subcommittee, but there was certainly a discussion that was had, which I was led to believe was part of that subcommittee, that wasn't keen on developing the commercial elements, which was in line with DG1 in terms of the subway development.
Chair, it's not in the minutes, so it couldn't have been agreed. And this minute has been agreed, I would think, through full council, because it was back in May 2018. Now, is it a case that there's a cabinet or some system that officers are putting in place things that do not come to this us as members? Because there is no way that I can see we can go through a procurement process starting at 48 hours after the end of this meeting, because you can't implement a decision because of recall, to have it in place for Monday.
To have what in place by Monday?
The cafe, because June the 3rd is when the new academic year starts, according to the papers.
I don't think the intention is to have the cafe up and running by the start of the next session.
I'll read you 332. There is need now, whatever that means, to procure a cafe provider by the time the new academic year starts in June. Or, it's in the papers. Chair, I suggest that we defer this because there is obviously information here that is not correct, and there is something going on out with committee where members aren't making decisions, or maybe members are, I don't know. But these are things that should have been here or at the ad hoc sub for member decision, and it's quite clear this has not happened.
I'm sorry, I'm not particularly able to give any other information because I'm not aware of the situation. I think the intention of the paper is to give members choice. I can't comment on the question of whether an ad hoc subcommittee gave a preference or not, but certainly nothing has been developed since. The intention of this paper was to say, common sense, we're going to have young people in from next week. We recognise we're not going to have a cafe in from next week, but I think the paragraph's meaning we need to go on with starting procurement around the 3rd of June. If that's badly worded, I do apologise for members. But I think the intention in this paper was to say, what would members like to do in terms of instructing officers to move forward?
Well, part of the reason for this paper is for us to agree an option, so I think we can still move ahead. Okay, we may query the veracity of certain statements within that, but we still have the option of deciding whether we want to go down the commercial franchise route or the social enterprise.
Chair, so how do we get something there come the 3rd of June for people that are starting? Because that's when, allegedly, we're moving in. Is there something in the background whereby commercial services or another provider have been lined up to actually take this on? Because something needs to be done, or are we saying that because there's no food, we're not opening on time?
I think clearly that we won't have food on the 3rd of June. We don't expect to have a cafe in place on the 3rd of June. And young people using the facility on the 3rd of June, if they're there over lunchtime, will need to access other facilities or bring lunch with them. I'm not expecting that anything will be in place immediately. I don't think there's anything underhand or sinister in this paper. As I understand, it's just asking you as members what direction you would like to go in terms of procurement, as I understand.
Ivor?
So what do people who require free school dinners do if they have periods before and after lunch? Go to Tesco's and do they supply it? Or maybe McDonald's, that's a better, healthier option.
Well, I'm sure what we would do there is make the arrangements that are necessary for the hosting school to provide a packed lunch.
So can we move ahead with the... Yes, 12.
Chair, I can understand Ivor's questions and his seeking responses to that, but I mean, I think the safe thing to do, take that paragraph out of it altogether and just take the paper as it is at the moment until that, if anything further goes up. But we're getting guarantees that there'll be some sort of cafe there to provide children during the school term. So we've got that confirmation of that will happen, but we just don't know it'll be through that cafe aspect. But I want to go on to another aspect. I know that, you know, there's two options in here. There's a commercial option and a social enterprise option. And it was my understanding previously that, you know, it was to be based on the social enterprise option for the cafe. So, you know, the type of thing that comes to my mind is, and I think it's kind of alluded to in here, the type of thing that, you know, that Usual Place provides. And these for kids with additional needs, as well as to provide training for everybody in all aspects. And also run a very viable commercial aspect to that. So it's, you know, it's something that the likes of the Usual Place do, and they do very well. And I think that kind of model was envisaged up at the bridge during all discussions previous to that. So it would be my view that we should still be going down that route and looking for the same type of model as the Usual Place. My view.
Yeah, I've had informal discussions with Heather at the Usual Place, and that's certainly something which we've thought of, and it does fit in with the ethos of the entire concept of the bridge as well. So obviously that's a decision for the committee to make, but that would certainly be my personal option. Adam?
Thanks, Ian. I would certainly agree with Councillor Nicholas. I think that, and yourself, if there's a possibility of having a commercial cafe there, but actually it's training young people, and I think that's exactly what the bridge is about. And I think actually as well, if we defer this item today, then actually it would be another 2 months before actually getting some sort of catering provision in at the bridge. So, I mean, I would move that we go for option 2, and more than happy to have an update report at the next CYPLL committee, because I appreciate there are some answers, some questions that I've had that maybe haven't quite been answered today, and you know, no reason why we can't have that as an update report to the next CYPLL committee.
Adam?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, it's a subject that I was going to bring up before the other members brought up, because I too was slightly confused by the fact that members of a subcommittee had agreed something, and then we, as a parent committee, I assume we're the parent committee of the subcommittee, are asking to make another decision. So I guess my question is, what is the role of the Ad Hoc Bridge Educational Trust subcommittee? Because if they're not making decisions, what is the role of them within this? And yes, I too am aware, I'm just going to think of in my own ward, we've got the cafe in the Merrick run by the ARC, and it's a huge facility that offers a lot of opportunities for people within our region. And I would be really disappointed to see us putting a commercial venture into what is an educational establishment. So I think it's really important that we do pursue a social enterprise model. But yes, I'm confused by the ad hoc subcommittee. I don't sit on it. I'm aware that members here do. So it's just clarification. What is the remit? And are they due to meet soon? Because if they've only met once, if they're not meeting, why have we got them? I guess is my question.
Colin?
Certainly, my focus since return to work has been about the trust, developing the full trust, and the confirmation through the monitoring officer, through Rona Lewis, that in fact decisions at the moment can be taken by members around the building over the course of the year until we hand over to the trust. So my understanding was that it's for members in here to make decisions about any major operational issue around the trust and around the bridge in its first year, which is why the paper's in front of you. I think the trust itself, when it's fully established in 2020, would be in a better position to move forward because it's helpful to them. The cafe is already in place, but clearly in the future the trust could review options and make changes at a later stage. But as I understand it, from speaking to the monitoring officer, at the moment this committee is able to make this decision in advance of the trust taking over in 2020.
Can I just ask one supplementary question? It was actually a separate issue. On the page 19, it says on 3.4, we recognise that there is work to do in helping people understand what we're aiming to achieve. Can I ask, what is that work? Have we got anything in place to actually start getting that message out to the community?
Sorry, can you tell me which section you're talking about?
Yep, on 3.4 on page 19, the second last sentence, it states, we recognise that there is work to do in helping people understand what we are aiming to achieve with the bridge and the space it will work in. So what are we going to do on that? So I mean, it's really important that we're recognising that there is confusion. What's the plan going forward and how to address that confusion?
Okay, thanks. I think that some of the paragraphs here are a little bit historic and we've moved on a little bit. Very clear that the young people will be getting into the building next week and will recognise immediately what they're doing, which is learning in classes, no question about that. We also know from the option column that the young people right across Dumfries and perhaps in due course further afield will recognise that there are courses that they can access, so that's very clear. What we want to develop is an opportunity for the young people also to see other partners working in the building. We have had, even though the building officially opens after Thursday, we've actually a huge number of people through the door in terms of conferences and opportunities to use the spaces. And what we want to do is develop that as time goes on, so that it's neither a school, nor a college, nor a business facility, but there's real complexity around the opportunities to bring people together. What we want to do, I think, is, having spent quite a bit of time to get the absolutely most important thing in place, is that young people could start next Monday, is there's a great opportunity now to get the communication out there and the communication around what will be possible in due course. I think there is a long way to go. I think other items can develop as time goes on, but clearly we're looking to get better communication on what is a really good story about what's happening there.
Can I make a suggestion that perhaps we get a Facebook page up and running? I know DG1 has got a new Facebook page and it's been really positive seeing the posts coming up and it's building excitement. Can we do a similar thing with the bridge to just build that excitement, the anticipation, so people actually can feel like that they've had a sneak preview of what's happening inside, so they can feel ownership of it as well?
Yeah, I think that's a really helpful suggestion. I think, in all truth, we saw the absolute launch of the bridge being on the 17th of August, which is the new school year. Because a school timetable begins in the 3rd of June, it's given us that month of opportunity of young people being in, testing out how that's working. But I think there's a great opportunity to really launch on a bigger scale in the new school year. Thanks.
And just on the back of that, casting our minds back to when we were actually discussing the hub as it was at the time, which subsequently became the bridge. One important aspect was to enable people to re-enter education for retraining during the course of their lives. So the way in which it's actually structured and run will facilitate that. I know the college is keen to run courses from there, and I think the higher academic institutions are quite happy to do that as well, because they see it a way of tapping into people who probably wouldn't go up to the Crichton area in order to retrain, etc. So it is important that we do that, but also to acknowledge that it will develop and grow over time.
Chair, would it be helpful to suggest to members that we bring a report back in September to this committee, by which time we'll have a lot of young people in there, there'll be other partners working with young people, and we can give a really good update on how things are operating over the first few months.
Doug?
Thank you, Chair. I think it was myself. It's this bright light shining behind me. And one to either side, I think, as well, I'll have to say. See, picking up on Ivor's point, just to try and be constructive, I think, as best I can. So Ivor's, from what I can hear, is picking up on it. It's really due diligence. Are we complying with standing orders, procurement standing orders, what we've got in place for the council? So what we're being told is the council, over the next year, are acting as a caretaker trust until such time the trust that we're putting together is properly formalised and supported and so on and so forth. So in the meantime, I think all we really need is a reassurance that we will comply with the standing orders, procurement standing orders that we've got in place. That can be done operationally. And if that's the case, because of the short notice, I was saying 3rd of June, that Colin's absolutely admitted, said it's not going to happen for the 3rd of June. I think Scott's in support of that. So if that's the case, it's not going to happen. There's no harm, I don't think, to say, okay, there's a report coming back, whether it's July or September, just to say this is what we've done. This is what we've done. We have complied. It is about making a safe decision, but I think we have to comply. We did a very long and it was quite difficult at times, but scrutiny review on growing the local economy through the procurement service. So it's up on our agenda. The full council's seen that, quite high on the agenda. The full council supported that. So we should be looking at all aspects. So whether it's a particular organisation that's been mentioned now, whether it's a private sector, whether it's in-house, I just think we need to make sure that we're following the proper procurement standard orders. That's all I really picked up from Ivor's point. I think he makes a lot of legitimate, and Ivor can speak for himself, I know that is but that's what I'm kind of hearing, just to put my bit on it.
Yeah, obviously we are going to make the decision about whether we want to go to the franchise or the social enterprise today. So we could have a report coming back in September. Presumably we can have discussions with July. Okay, July, we could have discussions in the meantime with organisations who may be interested, so that would also update that particular aspect. Ronnie?
I think we're getting there, and I'm quite happy with second option to Adam says about social enterprise. I think Ivor got some relevant points, and I think we need clarification on that, but that doesn't actually change the ability to make them decisions. This is a parent committee. We can make these decisions with a subcommittee. We might find in that report some clarity on the subcommittee and members and the remit of that subcommittee. I was supposed to be on it, I think, but for different reasons, I'm now not on it, and I've never had a meeting with that when I was on it. But again, it never met as far as I was aware anyway. But I think there is a need to find out what the subcommittee, the remit is for that subcommittee, because I think it might, the way it was set up, I think it was very important that they keep a handle on everything that's going on in the bridge as it is happening and as things move very, very quickly, and then have a report back to the Education Committee. But if we get that clarified, I don't see any reason why we can't just move on with this paper.
Richard?
Yeah, I'm a member of this subcommittee, and I think it's met once, and there was a meeting cancelled late last year. Councillor Hislop's got the minute of the meeting there, and it doesn't refer at all to social enterprises or private enterprise being in the bridge to provide catering facilities. So I think this subcommittee should meet shortly to look in depth at the two options there. And the social enterprise thing with training opportunities is a good thing, but maybe not, because of I only heard about the group that might be involved in it at the bridge there. They're doing a good job at the usual place. Does that mean that is it going to be an extra provision, or are they just going to move their facility there? So I think we need to look at that at the subcommittee. So I would hope that subcommittee could meet shortly.
I've got no problem with the subcommittee meeting, but I think the option needs to be decided by this committee today in order to move this on. Ivor?
Can I ask, what is the financial implications against the business plan as detailed in this report, please? Because there's none. We are being asked to take a decision with no information whatsoever. Could it be that, yes, we put a social enterprise in, but actually the trust can't run the bridge because they've no money? That's what it looks like to me. And, well, sharing profits. I'll remind you of when, Commercial Services had a profit-sharing enterprise with Queen of the South. That got us into a lot of problems. Now, how much money and what impact will this have on the business plan for the bridge? There's no figures whatsoever in here. Now, I would say this is verging on maladministration, taking a decision where you have no figures to go forward with. Now, what's the figure, and let's hear it, and how does it affect the business plan?
Any figure at this stage would just be speculation in terms of the overall running of the bridge. Ronnie?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. You make a decision on the social enterprise. We look into the social enterprise aspect of it. It has always been that. So when we were looking at it originally from the foundation of the bridge, that was in that plan for that type of facility within the bridge. So it's nothing new. Nothing new. It's there. So we look at social enterprise and look obviously how that's going to fit in with the working in the bridge and the financial aspect of it as well. But the decision is social enterprise or a profit-making one.
Dean?
Thanks. I think it's unsafe to make a decision today. I think maladministration is one thing that could be said. I think, are we actually complying with our standing orders? I think operationally, our officials, the workforce has the delegated authority. They won't leave our children to go hungry. They will make sure when they get there they've got availability of food. That will happen. But we're being boxed in a particular route. I certainly feel it's either a franchise or a social enterprise. There's much wider aspects to that. We might end up with the same conclusion anyways, but as many options, we've only got two in front of us. This is unsafe. We could quite easily claim maladministration, could call for an internal audit and ask Audit Scotland to come have a look externally at the same time. A simple little thing for the sake of boxing us in and just try to ram a decision through the day. I think it's unsafe for the council, Chair.
But I think it's up to the trust to develop the business plan for the bridge overall. At the moment, the trust doesn't have the operational framework in place because the trust doesn't have any employees. Therefore, that is why it's been brought to this committee for a decision to be made. David?
The question I'd like to ask, Chair, is this an educational establishment or are we setting up a big business here? I was under the impression it was to train youngsters, and this cafe was part of that training. And I think that's where we're supposed to be. No looking at this big profits, this, that and the next thing. We need to get back to looking at education. That's what this place was built for.
Well, in part it's to do that, but also it is also a business facility in part. Katie?
Thank you, Chair. I'm just looking at clarification, please. Recommendation 2.2 is to agree the preferred option in relating to procuring a cafe provider. So we're agreeing to the procurement process. Are we agreeing to appoint at that point? It doesn't, because I'm aware, I'm thinking to the Sparling Bridge in Newton Stewart. We went through a procurement process and then we came back at committee to agree that the preferred construction company was Story Construction. So are we going to go through a similar process with this? Is that how procurement works? We agree to go out to procurement and then does it come back to committee for us to then appoint, or do they automatically get appointed after the procurement? It might be semantics, but it would just maybe give some clarity as to where we are with the decision we make today.
Well, I would suggest we would go out to procurement and then come back to this committee saying who's actually indicated an interest in taking on the option.
I think, Chair, I would imagine that would be the process we would go through. That would be go out with specifications. It would come back with this committee able to make the decisions. We do have another committee in July. We've got another one in September. I suppose the practical, just if we leave the procurement matter aside and we can get further clarification on that, the practical issue for the building is that whilst clearly in 3 or 4 weeks during June we'll manage, we don't have many pupils who are there for a long part of the day. Most pupils will go to the bridge for a small part of the day and go back to their own school, so it's not absolutely necessary that they'll be staying over lunchtime anyway. Okay, but in the longer term, clearly, more and more people will be using the bridge and it would be good to have a cafe in there. I suppose one of the considerations, presumably, is that the setup of the cafe is easier to do during the summer when there are no young people there, and that if we wait until July to then go out to procurement and come back in September for you to make a decision, then you're trying to set up a cafe while the place is operational. So I suppose those are some of the considerations that are practical in there. However, members have made some very good points, and it is in members' hands to decide in what direction we go in the first place.
Richard?
Thanks, Chair. I'm a bit wary about making a decision today, as other councillors said. There doesn't seem to be enough information here for people to make a decision. Yeah, I think we're being sort of entrenched in our views that one system is better than the other. I don't see, there are examples where private providers can offer training to young people, and it is mentioned in the report. As a member of the subcommittee, I don't know anything. Other people know more than me, and I only heard about some of these things today. So I would say that we need to look at it as a subcommittee and get it right. So I would say definitely unsafe. Any decision should be made definitively today.
Ian?
I suppose just one small point, and I'll leave it at this, but are we complying with our standing orders, saying when we go out to go through the tendering process, we're only identifying one particular group of organisations, you could say, as in a social enterprise? Why is it not going out freely? It could be a local business, it could be the social enterprise, it could be a franchise. Why are we boxing it in such? I don't think we're complying with procurement standing orders. I may be wrong, but I've asked the question, Chair. It needs to be answered. It's unsafe. Come back in July, and it'll be straightforward.
All we're doing here is actually choosing which option. We aren't actually choosing a provider. And in recognition of what the ethos behind setting the bridge up was, this was part of the idea, was that we would have training facilities for our young people and indeed for our older people. So I'm quite happy we make a decision today on whether we go down the commercial route or whether we go down the social provider route.
Yeah, you've got a motion. Is there an opposition to it, would you put in? Because I think we're dragging our heads here.
Chair, can I just ask as well? I have asked for a question to be answered. It hasn't been answered. This is, in real terms, a predetermination of an outcome before we go out to it. That's what we're saying. That leads to maladministration. The public perception, it's high in the risk register if you look at it with the council. So we've put the question, we've asked for the answers to come back. We haven't had it on procurement. Are we actually complying, boxing it down, narrowing it down to such a small scope rather than go out to an open free tender process?
Chair, we're not going into procurement. What we're doing is a model. Are we going down the franchise model? Are we going down the social enterprise model? That's what we're doing. We're not procuring anything at the moment, and that decision will be later on. And I think 3.31 actually sums it up well. This is an educational establishment, and the social enterprise model has a fluid movement that can do delivering educational offerings rather than the commercial aspect. So that's my reasoning for doing it. It will do that. It will fit in with the educational needs. It will fit in with the educational establishment. We might as well put the education in the bridge out to procurement, if we're going down any other way, because it's, education could have been a private school if you want, but that's not what it's for. It's to provide it's an educational establishment providing educational offerings through SVQs, etc. And that's the model that I'm picking.
I'd agree with that, Adam.
Sorry. You can't just take a blank bit of paper out to procurement. We're taking a decision here today. Are we going to go down a profit-making venture, or are we going to go down a social enterprise venture? I happen to think, and hence why I put forward the motion, that a social enterprise that is there is giving young people and indeed older people the opportunity to get SVQs is the best way forward for our local economy, but also for our local people and for in particular young people going through education. I put forward a motion to reflect that. I've also put in that motion to have a report in July, because there has been some issues that have been brought up, particularly in relation to the ad hoc subcommittee. I'm more than happy that we start to proceed to a vote, because we are going round in circles.
Okay, we've got a motion. Do we have an amendment?
Chair, I'm going to move that we defer this on various grounds. There is no financial information within this report which may have an effect on the education budget. It's quite clear at 320 in the report, if we were to get a franchisee, they would fully equip the kitchen. Now, there is no mention of that in option 2. There is no mention in this paper of any figures as to what this will cost. There is no mention in this paper of what the effect of picking one option over the other would have on a business plan and the sustainability of the running of the bridge. That isn't in here. So I don't think there is sufficient information to allow for a safe decision to be made today, and I would move so that we would defer till July.
You have a second?
I'll second that. I think that we don't have the financial information. I know that the good intentions of the administration of this, but I think we need to take a bit more time to get it right, have the figures. We don't know, mention a business plan, there's no business plan there, so I think just take your time and get it right.
Okay, so we've got a motion that we move to the recommendations, and we've got a amendment that we defer.
I think option 2 is the recommendation, Chair.
So we have a motion put forward by Councillor Wilson and seconded by Councillor Nicholson, and that is to agree option 2, but with a further report to come back in July. And we have an amendment from Councillor Hislop and seconded by Councillor Brodie, and that is to defer this decision due to the lack of financial information in the report. Would you like to add something?
Point of order should not be a case of you take the procedural motion first, which is to defer, and there's been no amendment to actually take the decision today, and then move on to the option one, because it's two different things. I believe there was a question at full council about budgets and it wasn't done properly there, but we'll bring it up before we take the vote this time.
Yes. So in that case, are you making a motion to defer the item, and do we have an amendment in that case?
Adam, you want to speak?
I'll propose that we take the item today.
Okay, so just to clarify, I have a motion put forward by Councillor Hislop and seconded by Councillor Brodie to defer this item for further information on the financial aspects, and I have an amendment by Councillor Wilson and seconded by Councillor Nicholson to determine the application, the paper today. Councillor Lever.
Amendment.
Councillor Surtees.
Amendment.
Councillor Brodie.
Motion.
Councillor Campbell.
Amendment.
Councillor Ian Crothers.
Motion.
Councillor Karen Crothers.
Motion.
Councillor Nicholson.
Wait a minute, you forgot the half here.
Councillor Davidson.
Thank you. Amendment.
Councillor Dempster.
Amendment.
Councillor Fairbairn. Councillor Giusti is not here. Councillor Hagman.
Amendment.
Councillor Hislop. Councillor Inglis. Councillor Little.
Amendment.
Councillor McComb.
Motion.
Councillor McKee.
Amendment.
Councillor Stitt.
Amendment.
Councillor Tate. Councillor Wilson.
Amendment.
Robert McQuiston. Timothy Birrell. Sam Scobie. Not here. And I can confirm that the amendment carries and the decision will be made today.
Right, so we have an outstanding motion, which is that we go down the option 2, the social enterprise. Do you have any counter amendments? Ivor?
Chair, I would move that we take forward both options and we have a qualitative as well as a quantitative process whereby when it comes back we can judge whether we want to go down either route, because we don't have the information here today. So I would move that we take forward both options and go out to procurement for a commercial one which may bring in money, and a social enterprise which may actually meet the criteria better if it's more quality that we want rather than quantity.
Katie?
Thank you, Chair. Again, it's just a point of clarity. I appreciate this is still my first term of being a councillor and I'm still learning what the procedures are. But can I ask, when we open a new educational establishment such as Dalbeattie, or in the past when we've opened new high schools, have we ever looked at commercial enterprises to provide meals within our educational establishments? As I say, I'm just looking for clarity on how the process has worked in the past, because as far as I'm aware, this is an educational establishment and I'm not aware of inviting commercial enterprises into our schools. But maybe they have. I'm just looking for clarity, please.
No, we haven't done that in the past with our schools, no.
Ivor?
I'd like to second it, and just to reply to Councillor Hagman, this is a new groundbreaking facility. It's completely different from what we're doing. It's a really good thing, and I think that it's not unusual that educational establishments and colleges and universities have got private enterprise involved, and it's to the benefit of both institutions.
Okay, so we have a motion, we've got an amendment. Can we go to the vote?
Chair, can I just have one point of clarity again? I'm just trying to establish this for myself, so apologies to the committee. However, how can you compare a commercial venture with a social enterprise when they have two completely different ethoses and end objectives? I'm just confused as if we get 2 lots of procurement. I'm sorry, but I would be astounded if the commercial venture doesn't try and come in at a lower value, because if a large multinational comes in with a very, a good business case. So how can we compare social enterprise with commercial? And how, if we do go down those two, what do we then do with the information? So it's just a point of, information from the member who's proposing that we look at both options.
I think we really need to make a decision on this. This will just roll backwards and forwards all day. So Ivor, can we have details of your amendment?
Chair, that we take forward both options and go out to procurement for both options, and that we can look at a quantitative and a qualitative process, because we don't need to take the highest offer, and if we put that in and we score it maybe 50% for quality against quantity, as in whether we want the educational against the financial, because we can put that in. That's something that can come through the procurement process.
Yeah. Okay, so can we go to the vote?
Okay, I'll confirm what the vote is. I have a motion put forward by Councillor Wilson and seconded by Councillor Nicholson, and that is to go with option 2, but with a further report to come back in July to the committee. And I have an amendment put forward by Councillor Hislop and seconded by Councillor Brodie that both options are looked at and go out to procurement for both, and they can look at a quantitative and a qualitative process.
Members happy with that? Okay, so we'll go to the vote.
Councillor Lever.
Motion.
Councillor Surtees.
Motion.
Councillor Brodie. Councillor Campbell.
Motion.
Councillor Ian Crothers.
Amendment.
Councillor Karen Crothers.
Amendment.
Councillor Davidson.
Motion.
Councillor Dempster.
Motion.
Councillor Fairbairn.
Amendment.
Councillor Hagman.
Motion.
Councillor Hislop. Councillor Inglis. Councillor Little.
Motion.
Councillor McComb.
Amendment.
Councillor McKee.
Motion.
Councillor Nicholson.
Motion.
Councillor Stitt.
Motion.
Councillor Tate. Councillor Wilson.
Motion.
Robert McQuiston. Timothy Birrell. And I can confirm that the motion carries, and therefore members have agreed on option 2 with a further report to come back in July to the committee.
So can we move to the recommendations? 2.1, we've noted the progress on the bridge, and 2.2, we agreed that the preferred option should be option 2 with a further report to come back to this committee in July. Okay, so can we move to agenda item 6 on page 25? This is the Property, Buildings, Schools Asset Class Update. This paper is the annual report which details the 3-year capital programme for investment in asset class schools. It includes funding and spend profiles across financial years 2019-20 to 2020-22. Members' approval is sought for the individual projects as detailed in Appendix 1. The report also provides the same funding and spend profile information within the Early Learning and Childcare 1140 hours capital programme. We have Lauren to speak to the paper. Is there anything you want to add, Lauren?
Thank you, Chair. Just to add, I think across the financial years that the paper represents, it shows a balanced spend profile against the allocations, taking into consideration the slippage acceleration of spend across the 3 financial years, and it was within the set tolerances from policy and resources. Investment continues to be on a proactive-based methodology following priority investment. However, there is still a certain level of reactive investment that has to take place to certain situations when it arises. But happy to take any questions on the paper.
Thanks, Lauren. Mel?
Thank you, Chair. I'm pleased to see investment coming to some of those schools considered small rural, and I hope that the parents of those schools will see this and be reassured that the Council is continuing to support the fabric of these schools. If you just indulge me a second. Dumfries and Galloway Parent Carer Council Forum is continuing to do its best to represent to education services the views of parent councils, many of which come from small schools affected by the budget changes, but also many others from all sizes of schools, primary and secondary, where parents are concerned at the diminishing number of bodies in the education system. We hope to be able to continue working with education services and head teachers in discussions and working groups to promote these parental concerns. And whilst remaining an independent, non-funded and totally voluntary forum, we support the work of We Schools Matter campaign in seeking a positive outcome for all small rural schools in the region in the face of the challenges they have to their pupil roles and class sizes. We will continue to encourage parent councils to work closely with their schools to find positive ways to work within this year's budget challenges and to make sure that they are actively involved in consultations regarding potential further changes to education services budgets. We're also encouraging all parent councils to engage with their elected members in their wards to give them a complete picture of all the positives, the excellent learning and teaching, the terrific social environment, the community support, and everything going on in all our schools across the region, as well as ensuring their support when difficult situations arise. Thank you.
Thank you, Mel. I forgot to remind members that we don't want to indulge in parochialism, so if you have any questions about individual schools, can you take it up with officials outside of the chamber? Katie?
Thank you, Chair. I am going to mention an individual school, but not because it's in my ward, but I'm looking at page 29 and health and safety contingencies. I was drawn immediately to the fact that under there's a project description of a retaining wall. Now, there has been tragedies in other local authority areas with walls and our young people not being safe. So I was just really concerned to see this, and I'm just looking for reassurance that the retaining wall, which is mentioned at St Ninian's Primary School in Newton Stewart, is actually secure. The children are completely safe, because I would be horrified to think that we would suffer a tragedy that happened in Edinburgh here. Just as a side point, thank you, Mel, for your speech there. Yes, the PTAs are really important, and I do enjoy going to them. Unfortunately, I don't always manage to get to them every time, because we have lots of community council meetings and other evening meetings. But yes, I would absolutely wholeheartedly agree. It's important that as elected members we get to our PTA meetings. So thank you. But yes, back to yourself, Lauren. Thank you.
Absolutely, the health and safety of our children, youngsters in our schools is always a number one priority. In this particular instance, if you know the facility at all, there's a boundary wall to the back of the school with an adjoining property which is at a higher level. It was showing elements of it deteriorating. So actually what's happened is that's been dragged back. The cost is actually to rebuild it and put it into a more acceptable condition. So there's absolutely no risk to any staff, pupils or members of the public, because there's also a right of way goes through the back of the school as well.
Ronnie? No, that Ronnie. Ronnie?
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, I mean, can I just highlight on page 29? Now, I'm going to name an individual school here. I think the last member actually named an individual school as well. So I'm going to ask Mr. Foss actually about the situation at Gretna Primary School, where we've had extractor fans not working in the toilets for over 4 years. We've had a problem with the boys' urinals, where they're highly health and safety does come into it, because I'm sure you're well aware that the tiles on the urinals are non-slip. The extractor fan situation has been going on for well over 4 years actually. And you must keep this in mind, but these toilets are internal toilets. There's no windows in them, there's nothing in them. So, I'm just wondering if they're included in the primary school various small works programme.
Since you asked the question, I'll let Lauren answer if you can, but otherwise, any of the questions of that type about particular schools, take out with, which the officers have further information available out with the meeting. Lauren, are you able to answer that?
We are aware of the situation at Gretna. I think, as in numerous locations, there's a difference between what's a revenue repair cost and what's a capital investment. The report in front of you represents the capital investment across the authority. So if there was a refurbishment or significant investment going into Gretna, we would address it through that project. In this instance, for these particular items that you've raised, they're more a repairs, elemental fix of a very specific part within the building. I am aware that the Clacker Works and the Repairs Help Desk team do know around the situation of the extractor fan. I believe there was and is a solution for that. I think looking at the toilets, that's probably a slightly larger issue in the condition of them, and that's to fix that properly and to address it will require Gretna to come round for a further level of investment, and then we would do the same as we do in other locations where that would be a full strip out and start again. I think what we can do though is go back through the local Clacker Works and have that investigated and looked at to see if there's anything that could be done short term. But certainly the long term solution would be a full refurbishment of those areas. However, Gretna has to almost wait its turn inside the prioritised order, unfortunately.
Raise it out with the meeting. Jim, Colm.
Thanks, Chair. A couple of points in relation to condition surveys. Firstly, is there any indication when the next condition survey is likely to take place?
Just speaking to colleagues in Property and Architectural Services, the tender is out currently for that, and it should be due back next week, I believe. And once we've got the findings from the costs associated with that, we'll be able to put a programme in place across the authority. What the intention is that the condition surveys would be carried out not just across the school estate, but also the non-school estate as well. But obviously, it'll be funding dependent on what the value comes back at.
And second point, how do you accommodate the situation where one part of a school building is markedly poorer in condition than the rest of the building?
I think it's a good question. I think it's more prevalent where we have a school that is of different blocks, so it's a separate building. We look at the condition of the individual blocks. Within a building that is one space, it's an elemental breakdown across the whole footprint of the school. So it might be that one classroom, the internal decoration, for example, is a condition D, whereas another classroom is a condition A, and those grades, if you like, are averaged out to the final A, B, C or D across the whole facility. Again, the major elements cover things like the roof, external walls, windows, decoration, fixed furniture. There's 12 different areas that it covers. All have slightly different weightings because some are deemed to be more important than others. For example, the physical structure of the building, the walls and the roof, get a higher rating than the sanitary facilities. Mechanical and electrical get quite a high rating as well because they are the things that you need the school to have to be able to operate. All of those numbers are thrown into a mix and that gives you an overall grade for the school itself. So it does account for different parts of the school being different levels of condition.
If there are separate blocks, would each block have a score?
Yes, that's what we've done. In the last priority order that was brought to committee, it does mention, off the top of my head, I'm thinking Lochabriggs Block 1, Lochabriggs Block 2, it mentions them through there. So any school that has multiple blocks within it will have them all itemised as an individual element.
Jim Dempsey.
Thanks, Chair. Jim McCombs kind of touched on a bit of my question. I thought when we got these reports and what we intended to invest, we also got the stock condition or the category of the school, whether it's a condition A, B, C, or D, or whatever. Because I see we've got £2 million projects. One of them, in my word, was very welcome, but that school's a 1950s school. No fit for purpose now today, and I just worry that we're spending £2 million and it'll never come up to category A or B because of the general construction style, etc., of the school. I just wonder at what stage we'll look beyond that to how we do ensure that all schools are fit for purpose. And I welcome the investment, and it's obviously necessary. It wouldn't be in the report. Just rather see a new school there if we're getting that kind of money. I think the challenge is making sure that the funding that we have is spent appropriately, is spent equitably across the estate, and is spent in the right locations. I absolutely agree that we have an ageing estate where we have, more than half of our schools are buildings that are standing the test of time because they are of the type of construction that was used, and then we have a middle gap of schools that were 50s, 60s builds that are not weathering well at all, and then we have also a range of newer facilities that will hopefully stand the test of time as well, and it's those middle sections within the school estate that are the most concern. There's absolutely no way that we can look at a replacement programme for those facilities with the level of funding that we've got. All we can do is mend and repair the number of schools that we sit on just now. It's a very wise question. It's a much wider area of discussion than what can purely be covered through the asset class funding, though.
Thank you. Lauren, sorry, I want to refer to Appendix 2 about the early learning childcare funds. I noticed on the page it says nursery school, and there's two of those, one's for furniture and one's for kitchen element funding. Are those specific schools, because I'm confused by that, or is that over across all our early learning childcare centres?
Yes, absolutely. It's across all facilities. So wherever we have extended or expanded the nursery provision, we've obviously had to put in the correct amount of furniture to marry up to those capacity changes. One of the elements within the duty to deliver 1140 was the fact that a meal is provided through the course of the day for every nursery age child. So in the identified locations with our colleagues in Enterprise and DG, they've identified the school kitchens that don't have the capacity to be able to meet that level of demand. So that both of those values are spread across every nursery establishment that sees investment.
Ian?
Thanks, Chair. Looking at Appendix 1, I think it is. So there's all sorts of different project descriptions. So roofs and mechanical, there's mechanical and electrical and so on and so forth. But refurbishment's mentioned a number of times. So I'll just pick on one randomly. Crosland Primary School, and 650k being allocated to that over the next 3 years. I just wonder, what does that mean, the scope of that work? Is that refurbishment, what does that mean in real terms, as an example?
So the investment is based on what the condition reports tell us is wrong with those facilities. So against those 12 items, if it said mechanical and electrical, i.e. the wiring and the water systems, that's the thing that we would focus on first at those facilities. When we ask our colleagues in Property and Architectural Services to go out and conduct a more intrusive survey at the facility, if they find anything else that's of a poor condition, we ask that that's included within the specification and the scope. So, by example, at Crotherstown, it's gone beyond just a single element replacement. It needs the roof looked at, it needs some internal alterations, it needs the electrical side of things looked at. So what we look at is the findings from our colleagues in Property and Architectural Services. We liaise and consult with the school staff and the pupils and say, right, how does this space work? Our colleagues in Property and Architectural Services know the physical, environmental side of it really well, and our colleagues within the delivery side, the operational side, would be able to comment more around the suitability. So it's the condition and the suitability of the school that we're trying to improve. So each school is taken case by case. It is governed, I guess, originally by what the condition survey says, but there is always scope for that to expand and contract depending on what the needs of individual schools are.
Do you mind to come back to you? I'll just try and put it into context. So if that's the case, and I know Crotherstown's above the role of 26 and it's growing and expanding, so as another example, I just wonder, is there any level of discrimination or probably not? So I'm just trying to find out. So look at A, it's got a small number, but there's a £575,000 investment there. How does that tally up in regards to the spend? I suppose I'm not saying we're against it in any way, because it's very much supportive of any investment in our small schools, but just it's something that's here, it's in the report, it's a question I think it needs to be asked and answered.
Before we revised the priority order methodology, there used to be a pupil investment ratio, which did absolutely capture the cost benefits per head, I guess, if that's the correct way to talk about it. But through the introduction of the condition surveys through the Scottish Government, we have a duty to address condition C and D schools and condition C and D elements. It takes no cognizance of the number of pupils within those facilities, so that's the priority and order investment that we're following just now.
Okay, yeah, I was doing some sums on this, and mention was made of the wee schools matter in the small schools. When you actually look at these figures, for schools with a roll of under 50, the total investment out of the money which is available is £5.8 million. And that equates to 52.5% of the investment in our school estate altogether. In terms of pupil numbers, they add up to 7.7% of all the pupils within our schools. So effectively that means that 47.5% of our investment over the next 3 years from this particular area is going to 93% of our pupils. So I think in terms of whether we support small schools or whether we don't, I think that's very important to take cognizance of. Okay. So can we move to the recommendations? Can we note 2.1? Can we agree 2.2? And note 2.3? Okay. Okay, so moving on to agenda item 7 on page 33. Dumfries Learning Town update. Members will be aware from papers presented here and elsewhere of the progress we have been making with our aim to provide the best start in life for our young people and to provide opportunities and excellent facilities for our communities. In Dumfries, we have seen completion of the bridge, St Joseph's College and North West Community Campus. DG1 is well on track to its much awaited opening, and it's important to ensure that future plans for Phase 2 do not tail off, but there is focus on making further progress. We recognise that public finances currently represent a challenge and acknowledge that the government are due to publish a new investment strategy. There has also been much learning from Phase 1. On that basis, members are asked if they wish officers to carry out reassessment through a formal option appraisal, and this is to be brought back to this committee in September to determine future direction. And we have Paul to speak to it. Is there anything you want to add, Paul? Is there anything you want to add?
Yeah, just to say that obviously in terms of the strategy and moving forward, we had a very positive meeting with the Scottish Government in Edinburgh back about 6 weeks ago now. Scottish Government were very clear at that meeting that obviously they've got a new learning strategy and that any bid going forward will be measured against that. So it was all about making sure that our estate was sized appropriately, that we had the correct facilities for the number of kids, both currently and going forward.
And I know that the leader and deputy leader also met with John Swinney, the educational secretary, and he was very impressed by what's been achieved in Phase 1 of the Learning Town, which bodes well, and hopefully bodes well in terms of bids for Phase 2. Richard?
Thanks, Chair. I think there's no doubt that Dumfries Learning Town has been a bold initiative and has provided Dumfries with impressive modern buildings and facilities, and I think a lot of the credit goes down to Colin Grant, so I think we should congratulate them in our recommendations there, because he came with a vision quite a number of years ago, and it must be great that this is now coming to fruition. I don't object either to us looking at a further phase in the future, but before that we need to have a bold and inspirational conversation on how we are going to transform educational provision in the east and the west of the region as well, so that we give children the same quality learning experience as their counterparts in the big town. So when the Learning Town was first mooted and agreed, I was assured that a plan would come forward for the rest of the region as well. So we need to look at the government's new educational strategy and see how that can be put into place in Arundel, Nestdale, Big Town, and the Stewartry. So I think I would also like a report on how we can make progress to address the issues in these areas, ensure we don't have a two-tier service. We talked this morning about the new community library in the Dumfries Learning Town, great thing. But how allow something like that in Annan instead of a cubbyhole in the town hall, associated with the customer services, which brings its own issues, which George Jimison is well aware of, our parent representative. So we need a bold vision to support and provide facilities for small rural primaries, to offer a broad and fulfilling curriculum, to help school clusters function collaboratively, and to ensure that there's a good transition between primary and secondary. I think the main issues for secondary schools, as well as with the breadth of choice, is failure to meet the needs of certain groups of pupils, which leads to the disruption of many students. One idea might be a cool centre, where pupils can get support for behavioural needs, help back into mainstream, and moved on to positive destinations. But I'm sure our educational professionals, they've got the ideas, how we could go that. Perhaps we could have more groundbreaking ideas in the three other districts in Dumfries and Galloway. So when it comes to recommendations, I propose an additional amendment. We bring forward a report on the future development of education in the areas with Dumfries. I think that would be a fair thing to ask.
Thanks to Karen. I'm aware that we have made very significant investment in schools in Mofford, Lockerbie, huge investment in Annan and in Langham itself as well. So, they haven't been neglected by any means. It's the Dumfries schools which have been neglected. Adam?
Thanks, Chair. I can only imagine that Richard Brodie walked out of a box that he's been sitting for the last 20 years, I remember being a pupil who moved into a brand new school in Lockerbie Academy, new school in Beatic, Moffat, extension at Annan. We've just invested quite a significant amount of money in Annan Town Hall to really see a fantastic community customer service centre in there. So I think it's fair to say there's been significant investment across the whole region. And of course, the last item that we've just had a significant investment in rural schools as well. So I think that, this council is certainly doing a good job of investing across all of our communities. In terms of this report, there is a technical question that I've got. It rightly states about Dumfries Land Town Phase 2 is in the council plan. It has been in successive administration budgets. However, there is in 3.4.7 a list of an indicative list. I don't think we should really start with indicative votes, but there is an option there to do nothing. And then in point 5, there's no, it says impact assessment, I acknowledge it only says does not seek to develop or implement a new policy, but actually you'd be going against council policy if we were to do nothing. So I'm a bit surprised that there's no impact assessment on actually, if we do nothing, what is that? What is the effect of that? So I would appreciate a wee bit of guidance on that. Essentially in 3.4.7, I think that, for me, the main thing is that actually the council is continuing with Dumfries Land Town Phase 2, but actually we're really looking to take that forward to the government. Of course, a plan that was there, 4 years ago, which is absolutely the right plan, may need tweaked. I appreciate that the government has changed some of the sort of principles behind investment in 3.4.3, but actually when I look at that list, the Dumfries Land in Town meets the majority of those, and certainly Dumfries Land at the Phase 1 has significant and good lessons to learn from that, and Dalbeattie, and ways in which we can actually tweak Phase 2 to be even better. So I think certainly for me it would be actually is that we're continuing with Dumfries Land Town Phase 2, and that we'll go forward with submitting those plans for funding from government. There may be working with schools, working with what's happened at Dalbeattie and Dumfries Land Town Phase 1, some minor changes, customer service centres or whatever, but that the actual overall thing is that Phase 2, what we're pressing forward with it, and I think that's the right thing to do.
Ivor?
Chair, this might surprise Adam, but I'll support him fully in that. I think one of the things that we have to realise is just before the budget setting, myself and yourself went along to Dumfries High School, and that was one of the big issues. When are we going to get what North West and St Joseph's have got? They've been waiting for a while. My sort of question was down the line, how do we make sure out of the options at 3.4.7 we put the right ones to deliver all of Dumfries Learning Town Phase 2 and not possibly risk some of it? That we, and is there any issues with regard to the new strategy for DLT Phase 2? Because we wouldn't like to think that we put forward one issue and the whole thing gets kicked out because, well, actually, if you'd done it this way, you would have got through quicker or you would have got things delivered better. So I think that's one, if we're going to look at 3.4.7 and which ones we want to rule out, well, do nothing is the first one for me. But if we go with the current bid, does that mean to say they'll say, well, actually, it doesn't fit our criteria now, but if you go with the first one over the page and prioritise it or something like that, then we can give you that opportunity to go forward. Because when you hear kids, they'll be possibly sitting in their classes today sweltering because they can't open windows, and then in winter, because the windows have gaps in them, the wind's blowing through them and they're freezing. And it's just, we want to see all of our school estate in Dumfries, and I'll be parochial about that. I'm not usually, but I thought, well, we've waited for a long time for Dumfries, so let's have a bit go. We've seen new schools in Stranraer through to Langham, and I think we do need to finish this commitment we've given to the parents and pupils of Dumfries.
Yeah, and that's certainly the intention of the administration. And as we say in the council plan, we're showing our total commitment to that. Colin, do you want to?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. I think really helpful comments from members so far. This paper was not about bringing forward other options. It was about saying it's 5-6 years since the decisions, but it's longer than that since some of the decisions were taken. Any bid to government will certainly have to be updated in terms of cost, and it's important to go back to this committee to let you know about that. But we did think it was important to give an indication to committee about what the government approach might be in terms of funding, and whether there would at least be a risk in moving forward with the overall programme that the government might not feel that that's overly efficient, and therefore you may face tackling the whole programme from the council alone. And that's part of the basis of the new investment strategy nationally. And lastly, I suppose it was just to give an offer to members if you wanted us to go away and revise or look at other options. We're clear that there's a council plan there, but we're clear there's a commitment, and we're very clear that whilst we would have been happy to do a full appraisal of various other options, if you're very committed to the current phasing as it is, then really what we would come back in September with would in fact be an update and the details around what the risks are and how we might try and move forward. So it was an option for members. A lot of times passed, costs will have increased. We want to let you know what those will be, and we also want to update you on what the risks are around any government funding, and thereafter for members to take it forward. I don't know if Paul wants to add anything to that.
Yeah, just to really explain that in terms of the funding arrangement, the Scottish Government will look in great detail at capacity. So they'll look at the number of pupils we've got in Dumfries, they'll look at the schools we've got in through that process. They were very clear at the meeting in Edinburgh that they would look to make sure that we were only building the estate we required and not too much. So for me that is a risk, and that we need to get this right, we need to get the shape right going forward, particularly not just in terms of the capital consequence, but also the revenue consequence going forward and into the sort of 40 or 50 years of the lifespan of a building. So we need to get the size right at this stage.
George?
I'm appreciative of what the councillors are saying, and it's not a competition between schools and all the rest of it. As soon as they build a new school or get a new car, it's a week out of date. For parents, it's not about looking at who's got the shiniest new school and all the rest of it. What parents are looking, and we're very conscious because we're seeing it in our own kids and going to our own schools, the difficulties the financial restrictions are. I've been involved in the Dumfries Learning Turn as a parent representative, coming from Annan, but representing the whole of Dumfries and Galloway, and it's a fantastic, innovative pilot. And it's there to demonstrate how you can do things better innovatively, and we can learn from that. So it's not just about the infrastructure. It's about giving every young person and teacher and professional in all the schools the same opportunity to get the best out of the schools. And that's the real struggle. That's what we need to be identifying. And it's not, we can see it, we're trying to do the best we can with a bad deck. But it needs to be the same for every kid in Dumfries and Galloway, that they get the same opportunities. The teachers in each school get the same support and opportunities. And it's not just learning. It's about bringing these kids up in a socially relaxed environment. It's as much about the people as the environment. And I'm fully supportive of the Dumfries Learning Town initiative because it's looking at different ways to do things. And what happens in the east and the west might be different, but we'll be learning from the Dumfries Learning Town. But our appeal for parents is we don't lose sight of the fact that every school, every head teacher should be looking at the bigger picture and collaborate with everybody. It's immensely important because our kids are at school now, and it could be better. And we need to work together to make it better. And it's not just about shiny new buildings, it's about the people that is within them.
Yeah, I agree. And it's the benefit to the overall community as well. You know, these are community assets, and that's what we need to work on as community assets, not just schools standing alone being closed after 4 o'clock in the afternoon over the summer period. And I think the Dumfries Learning Town project has been really instrumental in bringing all the schools together and working across Dumfries and Galloway and across Network East and in the West as well. Richard? No, sorry, Ronnie.
Thank you, Chair. I actually agree with quite a lot that's been said here, and it's very clear in the council plan, as you have stated, Chair, that in fact I've got in front of me, we will complete delivery of phase 1 of Dumfries Learning Town project and develop a clear plan to fully implement phase 2. That's why I can't understand why there's papers here. You know, we've got a plan, we've got our objectives to do that, then we take that forward. I think we need to be ambitious again. You know, we're going back to the whole areas. It's not something that's isolated. It's something that needs to happen. It's something that is, if you break that foundation and take it piecemeal and do one by one, then you're destroying the whole ethos of the Dumfries Learning Town, as well as through Dumfries and Galloway. And I think it'd be a betrayal if we did that to the people that we've been speaking to over a great number of years, and yourself, I remember, we both went round to schools and we gave them assurances about what exactly was going to happen. There'd be no backsliding, there'd be no backtracking on it. I know things politically change, but we can use that in a negotiating because it has got buy-in. It's always had buy-in from the original day where we went up to the Scottish Parliament, met Mike Russell at that time, and we got his full back in his set, and we explained that it was not just a piecemeal thing, it was a whole package that we were selling, you know, to and bringing in education that way, and we were very enthusiastic about it. John Swinney as well, Rob's mentioned John Swinney, very, very keen on that. Now, that innovation that we're trying to achieve hasn't went away, and it can't go away. It can't be finished at one school. It can't be finished at two schools. It's got to be a whole thing that happens. And I think if we start watering that down, then we're not going to achieve anything. We're going to just break the whole thing up. I mean, on the funding, I know that the report kind of implies about the funding towards the whole phase, then we might either said about getting nothing or breaking it up. Again, we know from phase 1 that the negotiation process doesn't work like that. When we did phase 1, we asked for the funding for Dalbeattie, St Joe's, North West Campus and the bridge. We didn't get that. And we knew we weren't going to get that. We knew that funding was going to come from the council, as well as the Scottish Government. But I think we should be pushing forward for the whole phase 2 as is in the council plan. I don't think we should water it down because it would just waste the whole thing.
Rob?
Thank you, Jeff. Yeah, I think I'm going to go back to a couple of the points that were being made about the importance of changes of ethos and practice that are involved with Learning Town. And if Councillor Brodie's kind of alluding to those and how those are spread out across the region, or how that pilot is used to inform how things are done better elsewhere in the region, then I think certainly there's something in that, and we absolutely need to be looking at it. In terms of what this is, and I think this is the enabling report for putting together the bid for phase 2. That's how I read this, and that's certainly what I think our intent is and what our intent ought to be. Quite a lot of time has passed since the very big tomes that we were presented with for the original business case. It's just a fact that was then and this is now. They've got to be dusted off. They've got to be brought up to date. I mean, construction inflation alone means that the figures have got to be dealt with. So we do that work, we get it back here, and we put it together in as persuasive a way as we possibly can that hits the government criteria and gets us the maximum funding that we possibly can. We did pretty well out of phase 1 without a shadow of a doubt. So the target, so far as I'm concerned, is to do as best we possibly can in securing the external funding for phase 2. I absolutely hear what Mr McCulley says about capacity. I mean, the fact is that demographics mean that we've got a lot fewer children going through our school estate than we used to have. That's absolutely unarguable, and you can quite clearly evidence it. So we have to be sure that we're not building more physical area than we're likely to need in the future. But we've already done those calculations when it came to Dalbeattie, for example. And I remember parent councillors still remember them as well. that were sometimes both parent councils and community councils that were quite acrimonious in suggestions that we were building a school that was actually too small. Well, in point of fact, now it's up and operational. Indeed, it is not. But certainly, what we look to create in phase 2, in terms of overall structure and size, is likely to be smaller than what we had before, because we know there's excess capacity and too much space. And I think it's quite right that we have to demonstrate that we've looked at that and assessed it properly, and we can satisfy Scottish Futures Trust, etc., on those sorts of points. But so far as I'm concerned, I mean, this is the green light to officers to dust off the very big documents. I think I've still got a copy of them in my office, taking up an entire bookshelf, and update them so that they're ready to go when the new round of funding actually becomes available. Very happy to support it on that basis. And just for the avoidance of doubt, I would be of a like mind with the other members that do nothing is certainly not an option that I would wish to include. Thank you.
Adam, are you wanting to speak?
I think as well, just coming back, I appreciate what Paul has said and things, but I also agree with the Deputy Leader on actually what will be in phase 2 will actually reduce the size of the current footprint. But I would give a slight warning that, 10 years ago or so we opened Lockwood Primary and Academy, and, now we're really struggling. It's just about overcapacity. So, there's a challenge there to make sure we get the balance right, and I think it's important that we take the time to make sure we do get the balance right going forward, and that's why I think that, I'll come back to what I said earlier, that this is, we're continuing phase 2. I think that's what this decision is today, essentially. And I think looking at the recommendations, I'm not quite sure if we actually need 2.6. I think that we appreciate this indicative list. I think that actually what's being said today is that actually we're continuing phase 2, and I think that actually 2.5 takes account of what the discussion is today, that we appreciate we're going with phase 2, but the government has changed its funding criteria. There has been some things that maybe need to be learned from phase 1 and Dalbeattie, and essentially it is about bringing forward plans to, certainly in my view, it's about bringing forward plans now to say, this is what we're going to submit to the government. This is, how do we work with parents and teachers to make sure that we get a plan that is exactly, we know what we want to do, but how do we just get it exactly right? How do we get the fine details exactly right, and working with teachers and parents and pupils to achieve that?
Richard?
Thanks, Chair. I appreciate there has been a lot of physical investment in new schools in like Moffat and Lockerbie, but I don't think that was the point I was making. I was thinking, how do we bring the same approach to Arundel, Eskdale and Stewartry and Wigton that we brought to the Learning Town? We've got 4 main schools, and they work together, and they're going to be supporting each other, and there'll be facilities in place to support the 4 schools. So that's the sort of approach I like it certainly in Arundel and Eskdale. 4 secondary schools, how can they work together, and how can we support them to work together and to meet the needs of the children there. So that's the thing there. So just like to ask the Director, could we have a report sometime in the future about what's going to happen in the areas as well?
Certainly, can do that. That's not difficult. That's around networking and collaboration. We'll certainly bring a report on that in the future. Can I pick up on just a few points that have been made? The reason the report's in front of you, again, and you will understand, I am a real champion of the Learning Town and would love to see the whole thing complete. There's no doubt about it. I think as officers we perhaps felt it might be irresponsible not to highlight the fact that the costs will have changed significantly, and that we should be bringing that back to you in due course. I think as officers we felt it might be irresponsible not to recognise that discussions with the government suggested to us that the whole bid or the whole package together might be a challenge in terms of achieving funding from the government. So again, that was just an indication. We thought it was important to tell you that. But equally, I'm very, very keen that we don't have officers working away at a significant level on options that you don't want to see in front of you anyway. So whilst this was a paper that simply asked that question, and gives you the opportunity to say, no, we don't want an option appraisal, simply come back in September with phase 2 dusted down. Very happy to do that, but we just wanted to be clear about how members would assess that. The only reason the do nothing question there was there because if we did an option appraisal, we would want to demonstrate that we can't do nothing because of the condition, particularly of the high school. That was all. What I'm taking from today, I think, is, and again, I would like to be clear about this so that officers are not working on an agenda which is not one that's been instructed. What I think you're saying today is that you're absolutely determined that we continue with the current brief for phase 2. However, it might need tweaking, prioritising, etc. And therefore it feels to me that the 3 middle bullet points are the ones around which we bring something back in September committee for, which is still address phase 2, look to see whether prioritising and ordering it gives any opportunity. It may well be that I've taken that wrongly, so I'd rather be really clear about this so that officers don't waste time. Okay? And actually, the 3rd bullet point was again around phase 2 with some adaptation to what a bid might look like in terms of the senior phase. However, if the decision of this committee today is simply bullet point 2, we would rather be really clear about that, and we'll bring back updated costs and proposals for what we would do as a next step in September. So it would be helpful if we were really clear.
Right.
Chair, it's phase 2, and I'm very clear about what I was saying. I don't know about anybody else, but I'm very clear that it's phase 2 as a whole. We're not blind to these things, and when at the very start of this process, before phase 1, we understood that costs would go up. We understood the liabilities for that. So we knew all that at the start. So that's why I can't understand. We won't get a figure on it now. Probably get a nearer figure now. But we always knew that was going to happen. We always knew it was a case that government funding would be nothing else. It would be a contribution to the project. It wouldn't be. It would be a cost to us as a council, and we always understood that right from the very start. And we wouldn't have went forward with it under any other basis. I think to clarify that, and Adam's saying about something in 2.5. That's fine. I still think there may well be a reiteration of our commitment in 2.6. Now, I've just scribbled something down here that 2.6 recommendation to say reiterates this council's commitment in the council plan to complete phase 2 of Dumfries Learning Town fully and continue with a whole town approach to the project. I don't know if that covers everything. So I'm quite happy to put on the 2.6 if somebody.
Well, that effectively is what we've been discussing, and that's a general agreement that we fully commit.
6. This for no ambiguity. It's reiterating our pledge to do that.
Ivor?
Chair, on the point that the Director raised, what my view is that under 3.4.1, the current phase 2 brief is to create the schools and campuses as detailed in there. And I would like to make sure that out of the points in 3.47, we choose the most appropriate one to deliver what's in 3.4.1. Because I don't want us to put something in and then actually you're getting nothing because it doesn't meet the new criteria or it doesn't fit. So I would like to think that we do end up with a new Laurie Now, a North East campus and a Dumfries Academy campus. But whichever way is the best way and for us to achieve that, and the quickest way, because, you know, like you said, 5, 6, 7 years we've been waiting on this, and you know, some children in the, or young people in the area aren't getting the benefit of the quality of facilities, which adds to their learning experience. And I think we need to find the way to do that as quick as we can.
Thanks. Yeah, I think that we're all in the same place. I mean, I have no issue with Ronnie's words, and Ivor also's alluded to 3.4.1. You know, I think this is where we want to get to, and this is what we're all agreeing today. And I think that, you know, today, whatever the wording of that decision is that very much my view is that the work continues that officers are currently doing, and this is what we're achieving. This is what we're setting out to do. This is our vision. You know, phase 1 has been a success, and with kids moving back into North West Campus, you know, it proves that phase 1 was a success. Now we're starting that work for phase 2, taking into account, you know, funding criteria from the government, taking all these things into account. But I think that actually, as I've said, a number of the elements there about the principles for funding, Dumfries Learning Town fulfills. Any that there isn't, we can carry out those wee tweaks that need to happen. But I think that, you know, the main, in the whole, the decision that we're taking today, I think that, you know, summarising what everyone's saying is that, you know, we are reiterating our support for phase 2. You know, 3.4.1 lays out exactly what phase 2 is, as Ivor said. And, you know, I think that, you know, we need to just find a form of words that encapsulates that on our way forward.
Yeah, because I mean, if we remember phase 1, that was tied into the Dalbeattie Learning Campus, and that ended up with the Scottish Government fully funding the Dalbeattie Learning Campus. Absolutely. And we as a council fully funded the other phases, the North West Community Campus, the Bridge and St Joseph's. So there are ways of shifting responsibility around as need be. We need to be proactive in terms of this. So I think the third option, pursue the current phase for phase 2, but prioritise the next bid and work programme, takes that into account in terms of where the funding is going to come from, etc.
I think that leaves the door open. It means we are just looking at one school at a time, and we're not actually taking in the whole. It's prioritisation. It never comes. In other words, I think, you know, what I was saying, you know, I know there's difficulties in different ways of achieving phase 2, but I think if we reiterate this council's commitment and the council plan to complete phase 2 of Dumfries Learning Town fully and continue with a whole town approach to the project, that encompasses what the council plan as it is, and the promise that we gave to people out there.
Rob?
Thanks, Chairman. I know how to read. I'm not saying we do only one school at a time, and I don't think that's what that third bullet point says either. In fact, there's no one in here apart from Councillor Nicholson who said that. But I also remember very clearly that Dalbeattie, for example, was a moving target forever. The amount of change and development that went on just with that alone was absolutely huge, and yet nevertheless there it is, fully successful and very much loved. We can't be absolutely clear at this point, based on that experience just of that one tiny bit, which was associated with phase 1 for funding purposes, but of course isn't phase 1 of the Learning Town. We can't be certain at this point just exactly how the whole of the programming of phase 2 is going to pan out. I mean, if we could predict that, we could all be lottery winners as well. But what we need to do is make sure that all the due diligence and work has been done to give us the best possible chance of getting as much cash as we possibly can in, and then fully understanding that we have to put up a great deal of public money ourselves to deliver it, which we've committed to in the plan, make sure those things line up in as an efficient and effective a way to actually, as Councillor Nicholson says, keep the promises that we made. What I don't want to do is set off at this point and say it has to be done in exactly that way and nothing else will do, and run the risk of actually ending up with what, three or four committee cycles or years of he and I arguing with each other and not a single brick getting stuck together. I'd rather that the due diligence and work was done and we can start making some progress. And that's, I think, what the third bullet point is about.
I think in terms of phase 1, you know, there was a structured delivery of all the buildings within phase 1 in terms of, so long ago now I can't remember, I think it was a Dalbeattie first, was complete first, then St Joseph's, then the Northwest, then the Ridge. So there is a sequence of doing these things. Ronnie?
Chair, in phase one, as you well know, and I've said it again, that we asked for funding for Dombite, we asked for funding for St Joe's, we asked for funding for North West Campus and the Bridge, and we didn't get that. And we understand that, but that's a negotiating process. So when you're negotiating for phase two as a whole, that's what we're wanting. Now, that's exactly what we're wanting. We're wanting the whole of phase two, nothing else. So when we negotiate with the Scottish Government, I don't expect to get every penny from the Scottish Government. I don't expect to get half yet. We didn't get half yet the last time. We still paid a lot more money in from the council. So, but it's a negotiation process, but the achievement will be then our responsibility to find the rest of that money. But you get as much money as you can through the negotiating process for the whole of phase two and what we're trying to achieve. And John Spinney agrees with the whole of phase two being an innovative way we're going as a council. So we're in a strong position there as well. And as Adam says, even the new way that the Scottish Government is looking at things, we tick a lot of boxes there. We don't tick them all, but we can work with that, and we can work with that through the negotiating process. But it doesn't stop our we'll deliver phase two.
Well, that is the commitment. We will deliver phase two, as detailed in 3.4.1.
You can't ask for money just for the high school. You can't ask for that. And
there's no intention of that.
No.
I haven't heard a single member say that we'll just do the high school.
I know that, but you can't, if you don't ask for it all, and you say, well, look, there's we're going to do that school first, and you ask for money for that first, and then a piecemeal basis.
I don't think there's any intention of doing that. Jim, you want to speak? No? Yeah. Oh, to the Jim.
Thanks, Chair. I would be inclined to urge caution with regard to the phrase adopt the current brief for phase two, because that may not be the way it is interpreted by parents. If I was a parent, I might be inclined to think, oh, phase two is being watered down. I think you're on much firmer ground if you simply stick with the wording at 3.4.1. And make no reference to adaptation. By all means, upgrade figures in the brief, but I would be very wary of using the word adapt.
Yeah, and I think we've certainly moved away from any consideration of adapting. It's laid out in 3.4.1, as you say. If necessary, you can say, pursue the current brief of phase two as detailed in 3.4.1. And everybody happy with that?
I'll just add, please, again, just so the officers are really clear about how we're taking this forward. I think we've already got a very clear message from committee that you want to rule out 1, 4 and 5, and that actually really it's around the question of whether it's all of phase two or there's any element of prioritising, and that seems to be what the debate is. We certainly have had a precedent for prioritising in that you had a phase one and then a phase two, as opposed to whole learning time. We have done that before. It may be that there's a form of words that says we pursue phase two, but actually it will be the government that might prioritise any element of that, because they may look to the school which is in condition C, and the council may have to look to all of the other schools for its funding. Again, we don't know what the outcome of that will be, but officers will do what this committee asks us to do, and it seems to me around maybe it isn't semantics around bullet point 2 and 3, and that's what needs to be determined.
I think that these bullet points are maybe distracting people. I think, the committee's been really clear, essentially that 3.4.1 is what we're looking at. I mean, I think what we're in danger of doing is starting to sort of predict what an outcome of any negotiating could be. I think that certainly this committee is laying quite plainly, I think it's come across, 3.4.1 is what we are setting out to achieve. That is what we will go into negotiations with the Scottish Government with. We are going for the whole of Phase 2. You're absolutely right, Colin, we have prioritised it. Phase 2 is now where we're at, that's what we're going for. And that's essentially what we're picking up from the committee today. And I think, what we have agreed is that 3.4.1 is where we're going, and that'll be for the negotiations. And I'm sure that, it'll come back to this committee with whatever outcome, and we'll have to make further decisions based on where the negotiations go to. But I think that, we should be very clear that we're going into the negotiations based on this is our vision at 3.4.1. And you have to go through the negotiating process, and we'll see, how that goes.
Perhaps something helpful that's coming out from this morning is that we thought we would need 3 or 4 months for a very fulsome option appraisal. We're not looking at that now, so I think we could come back in July with a paper which gives the updated costs around. Would that be okay to say that, Paul? You sure? So I think we probably could give an indication of the updated costs associated with Phase 2 as it is in July, and we could maybe ask for exactly what approach you would like us to take with the government. And that would perhaps resolve any of the matters from today. So we can go back at an early stage with an updated cost report for Phase 2, and in the July paper ask what exact approach you would like us to take with the government.
Okay, we happy with that? Yeah. All right.
I think the approach is still 3.4.1, and that's it. You come back with the detail.
Yeah. Okay. So with that, can we move to the recommendations? Can we note 2.1, note 2.2, 2.3, 2.4, 2.
Perhaps at 2.4 then you could add, and that a report will be brought back to the CYPLL committee in July.
Okay.
And that's it.
Yeah. Happy with that? Sorry, Jim.
Chair, the director also did mention a report with regard to the development of education in the wider area of Dumfries and Galloway. I think you made reference to that in response to Councillor Brodie.
There was a specific request from Councillor Brodie around, I think, networking and collaboration across between schools and other parts of the authority. Is that correct?
And future development as well.
So we can do that. There will be a report in due course around the school estate, which is part of the transformation process going on, but we would see that perhaps coming back to you in the autumn. Okay.
Chair, it's just in relation to the wider aspects across the region. There was a report to EE&I, was it last week or the week before, with regard to SOCIP and money going to colleges across the area. I think they were looking at hubs, was it Newton Stewart? I can't remember, in Castle Douglas, maybe Annan. Is that something we could tie in for collaborative working? Because, you've got the bridge that has that ability to bring in other bodies. So maybe we can go in with them in their project across the region so that we can use their facilities and they can use ours.
That's already happening, Councillor, and we're working closely with the college to ensure that the bid that the college made is developed across 4 or 5 schools in the first instance, and then further afterwards.
Yeah, I think it's 10 schools, isn't it, across the secondary estate, yeah, and the college and the bridge as well. Aware of the time, we've only reached agenda item 8, and I've been informed that we do have lunch, so shall we break? Right?
Sorry, Chair, I'm maybe a bit slow here. And he went to 2.4 and then he stopped, did he? He went to 2.4 then he stopped, and I think there's room in there for the other one that takes into account 3.4.1 that we need to pursue. Is it? No, sorry. So that states, it was me that fell asleep.
Okay, so we can have 2.5 reiterating our commitment to the Dumfries Learning Town as detailed in 3.1.4. Okay, so shall we have a break for lunch and meet up again at, no, 1:15. That's out. 1:15, and there's another meeting of, I don't know.
Audit, risk and scrutiny. So what we're going to do is about 5 to 2. I'll let Jeff know, and we're starting that meeting and then adjourning it to allow CYPLL to continue.
So hopefully that might be a bit of an incentive to get a move on.
No pressure.
And just to remind members that the bridge is opening on Thursday, and you should all have received an invite to it, although some people, 4 o'clock, yeah. Okay, so moving to agenda item 8 on page 41, early learning and childcare plan for expansion towards 1140 hours by 2020. This report brings to members' attention documentation that has previously been awaited from the Scottish Government around sustainable rates. The documentation provides a reassurance that the Council's independent financial review, conducted in August 2018, is in line with national guidance. There is no requirement for further considerations at this stage. The suite of Scottish Government documentation also provides awaited guidelines around contractual arrangements, the procurement of early learning and childcare, which will allow for the finalisation of an early learning and childcare framework ahead of August 2020. And we have Lauren to speak to it. Is there anything you want to add, Lauren?
No further comments, Chair, thanks.
Members? Katie?
Thank you, Chair. I wanted to bring up a point that was raised with all the elected members back in March, and it came from one of the childminders who's actually based within my ward. Now, there was a concern with the budget implications about a position for the Scottish Childminding Association. I understand that the Scottish Childminding Association put out a press release yesterday also about the officer post that they had that supported our childminders within the region. Now, my question is based around the 1140 hours, because childminders are mentioned within the documentation. If I look on page, R108, which is 25 of the first document in here, it states that the local authority should operate a transparent and flexible process which allows private and third parties, including childminders, to apply at regular intervals. Now, I have done a little bit of research because I was trying to work out, did we employ as a council officer, a development officer, or was that privately appointed? And my understanding is it's privately appointed. And looking at our glossary, again within Scottish Government guidelines, it states that the Scottish Childminding Association is a charity and a membership organisation that provides support. So clearly that role that is no longer funded within the council is in the gift of this organisation to fund should they wish. I understand that previously they've been funded by Scottish Government, the entire organisation, and there's also training available for local childminders through this organisation. So there is support out for our childminders. So the concern raised by my constituent that there was no support is kind of answered within these documents that we've got here. However, my question relating to the expansion is there a clear document or something that the childminders can look at from Dumfries and Galloway Council to say, I'm a childminder, I want to be able to expand the hours I offer, and do we have a clear policy for our childminders taking into account the expansion, if that makes sense. As I say, there's a lot of background information on there, but as I say, it's more that I can then go back to my constituent who is a childminder, and as I say, in relation to the press release that went out yesterday.
So you've done a lot of homework there. There's obviously in terms of support, I think what I would add is that there is a central team that looks across the full early years complement of services that are provided. That early years team will go and support childminders. And in fact, one of the changes that we're looking at that central team is maybe expanding them slightly to take account of the fact that there were some decisions taken around Early Years Scotland and the Scottish Childminders Association. So we as an authority have a duty to ensure quality across the board, and part of that will be inspecting childminders to make sure that they're meeting the new national standards. In terms of an overarching policy, the policy that we follow is one that's set within the blueprint, which is funding follows the child. So if there are any childminders out there that are currently in contract with the authority, then that can continue on. If there are any new ones out there, they'll once the procurement framework is in place, using the guidance that's now highlighted within this report, they would then be able to enter into contract with the authority. There is one minor element in there that talks about following the service delivery plan, but childminders on the whole are a very flexible delivery model, and it tends to be small numbers. So you know, I can't think of any situations where we wouldn't look to enter into a contract with a childminder.
Thank you. Lauren, sorry, just for a point of clarification there, I thought the central team for early years support only supported those preschool settings, early learning childcare settings, in partnership with the authority, because currently our childminders who do not provide funded provision don't have access to them or any of the training. So how on earth do they get access if there's no longer someone from Scottish Childminding Association supporting them?
So our duty is to ensure the national standards are delivered and met, and within that there will be the functionality to support childminders to ensure that they are meeting the national standards within it. So yes, that's not currently in place because we're not working to the national standards, but we have to by August 2020. So that's why we're looking at the mix and the maxing utilisation of the existing central team. So, for example, one of the recommendations in the report is to look at the business sustainability. Business sustainability requires us to go out to all of our childminders, all of our partner providers, all of our local authority settings and make sure they've got a continuity plan in place. So that's part of the engagement process that the central team will carry out. It's also to go and look at, well, there's 10 sections of the national standards, so we almost need to do that quality assurance check on all of those.
Sorry, just to clarify for me on the national standard. The national standard isn't enforced yet, but comes in August 2020 with the rollout of the additional hours. And my understanding was that you didn't need to look at the business plans because these childminders are already registered with Care Inspectorate, and Care Inspectorate, I thought, were able to support business plan. Is that something I've misread in the documents?
As currently, for an establishment when a new establishment comes to being, they have to register with the Care Inspectorate, who will look at their financial position and say that they are a viable organisation and allow the provider to deliver early learning and childcare. And that continues on. So any current providers just now, we will not go to the same level of scrutiny around their financial position, but any new providers coming on, the Care Inspectorate don't have the capacity to go around all of those in the initial instance, so we will take on that level of responsibility. I think one of the things that we have to do as the guarantors of quality is ensure that in between visits from the Care Inspectorate, we are in a position where we're confident that we're meeting the first 6 of the national standards, which are really around what the Care Inspectorate deliver for us. And then the last 3, business sustainability being criteria 7, that's the one that we'll take more responsibility over, and the others, there'll be a central responsibility rather than Care Inspectorate. So I think it is just the transition point that we're going through just now that defines those differences.
Yes, thank you, Chair, for letting me come back in on this. Is on the same subject or the same topic, in terms of the central team that is going to be liaising with the childminders, looking on page 142 of the second of the blueprints, there's evidence for childminders and what the evidence is and how it will be reviewed. Will it be up to the central team that actually does that review? For example, for the continuity plan, it says it should be aligned, etc. And the HMRS self-employment conversation, the local authority, so we are referencing there. And will it be that central team that takes on this role for the future?
Yes.
Thank you.
Members, can we move to the recommendations? Can we agree to 2.1, note 2.2, and agree 2.3? Okay, thanks. Okay, so if we can move on to agenda item 9 on page 177. Supporting learners, refocusing of the service. Committee last received an update on progress with the service in November. Since that point, there have been significant moves forward in the shape of the new presumption and mainstreaming in education guidance from government and budget savings. There is significant work to move the service to the next model, whereby support for learners is embedded within schools. In order to deliver this, there is a focus for officers in taking forward the better relationships approach, which has been widely promoted by Education Scotland, and ensuring that all the necessary frameworks, policies and procedures are in place. As the most important aspect of training and development to support staff in our schools, and this committee will see this work in July. Learning centres are also being reviewed to ensure our children and young people who have the most complex needs have the appropriate facilities available to them. This work will be shared with committee later this year. Colleagues have raised concerns on violent incidents in relation to staff. This is something that's taken seriously, and there are focus work streams to understand this better and put the appropriate approaches and procedures in place to manage risk and give staff assurances and support. And we'll have Hugh Smith to speak to the report. Is there anything you want to add, Hugh?
Thank you, Chair. I don't think anything to add to that rather lengthy introduction, but here to take questions.
Thanks, Hugh. Members? Adam?
Thanks. In 3.8.1 of the report, it talks about the remaining staff will move to new roles targeted to support key pressure points across schools. I wonder if you could just explain how that team will be formed. Is it that you'll have the remaining members of staff will take responsibility for one of the key areas, or will it be a team working with all of them?
So it will be a team that it's currently it's amalgamating two existing teams, Ops for All and ELFSOs. We have some interest in terms of folk that want to go, so what we're doing is actually creating matching pools with new job descriptions that we've got in place, engagement with the unions, and then we'll be creating 4 teams effectively that will be located across the region in 4 sites, and they'll be managed within our PT structures, so that they will be mixed across, so that there will be officers on each of those areas that will be in each of the localities.
Julie?
Thank you. Hugh, I was just wondering about 3.7. You've mentioned a couple of times in the document the pupil equity funding. And my concern is pupil equity funding was given to schools with very specific reasons. And head teachers have to account for how that money is spent. And the money is to be spent reducing the attainment gap. Now, my concern is that some of our support staff, our head teachers have been using the PEF funding to train support staff in specific areas of the curriculum, be it reciprocal reading, maths recovery, etc. And the concern is with staffing being reallocated in this way, we could be losing members of staff that we've invested really heavily in to other schools, to other facilities. And not every child who has a matrix of need gets a free school meal, and therefore the additional funding isn't there for every child. And I'm a bit worried we've got a 2-tier system developing, whereby the children who have a matrix of need, who also have a free school dinner, get this additional funding and money spent on them. But we have children spread throughout our authority in our small rural schools who only get, a couple of £1,000 of PEF funding, whereas our big town schools, some of them are getting 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70,000 pounds. That makes a huge difference in a school for supporting learners. And I'm just worried about this two-tier system appearing.
I think it's a very valued point that you raise, and I suppose what we were trying to do in terms of the report was highlight that there's a significant amount of additional funding that's coming in at targeted. A similar group of children, that nearly £2 million of PEF funding is targeted towards children who are being identified through the matrix. But I think it's a difficult challenge because the governance around PEF is different, and we have to adhere to that. So we try to highlight the indicative allocations within schools, but that obviously doesn't impact in terms of the allocation of supporting learners' resources. But that's an ongoing conversation. So I think your point's valid in terms of the issues about some of our smaller schools where PEF isn't available, but actually we would still, as needs are identified through the matrix process, we would still allocate resource to them, not in relation to the PEF. So that does mean that we have some schools that have significant investment, but again, that's where the children are with the greatest need, and we know the correlation between attainment and additional support needs and poverty. So it's
Thanks.
Sorry. The other thing I was going to ask about is I noticed there's been some concerns raised regarding violence within our schools and this low-level disruptive behaviour. Now, I notice it's predominantly in primary schools, but then it goes further on at 3.20 to talk about a joint safety committee where an issue was raised through the CMIS incident reporting system. Now, I know you've said there initially the analysis of the data was from one secondary school and it revealed double counting. Have you gone on to look at the other secondary schools to clarify that data?
I have to say that the information that was provided through the EIS union, which was using the CMIS data, was across all of the secondaries. We actually took a sample. We went to one secondary school to look at it to get a sense of actually is there double counting, but trying to separate out the levels or the significant concerning incidents of violence and aggression and assault as opposed to the general low-level disruption. That indicated for us that we're not actually seeing necessarily the level that some colleagues would consider is happening in schools. But on that basis that we've just commissioned an officer to do some work going into schools, to be talking to staff about their experiences, and we're also through the violence and aggression group working with the unions teaching and non-teaching who are going to be putting out a survey in the coming weeks for all staff teaching and non-teaching in terms of their experiences in schools. So building on the better behaviours, the behaviours in schools survey that was done in 2017, which is a national survey, we're going to do something locally to try and get a better picture of what's actually happening in our schools, because we're not seeing those levels and figures reported coming through our escalation systems.
Sorry, do you think there is under-reporting?
I think we will capture whether there is under-reporting. We will have a benchmark to be able to move forwards from, and I think that is a concern that our colleagues in the unions have.
Nick?
Thanks, Chair. I think the report tries to put a positive spin on what's happening in the support for learners, but I don't think you can gloss over the fact that the things that we're introducing this year are not going to improve the situation, not replacing the early voluntary retirement individuals. That's going to be less support in the system. The central management team, we mentioned guarantors of quality in the last report. Who's going to guarantee the quality and make sure the service is running properly across the authority? How are we going to the removal of Aberlour Futures contract? Well, it's obviously it's going to be less support for schools dealing with people who've got complex needs. So it's not going to help, I don't think. But you've heard me going on and on about this before, but I think the one thing I would like to concentrate on today is what concerns me, that we really don't know what's going on in secondary schools as far as support for learning goes. My caseload tells me that transition from primary to secondary is not functioning effectively. Sport which was given in P7 has not been transferred to the secondary schools. As a result, down the line, a couple of years down the line at secondary schools, the pupils are excluded and they're not getting appropriate provision. I know that the support for learning budget is devolved to delegated to the secondary schools. But I think as a simple committee, we should be scrutinising, still be able to scrutinise what's happening there, and hold the schools to account for what's going on there. I think the most recent evidence, which is quite concerning, was His Majesty's Inspector of Education's report into Ann Academy. Although the school got overall satisfactory performance levels, the inspectors are very critical about learning support and how it has been delivered in the school. Pupils were spending far too much time in the learning centre, experience a very narrow curriculum, not really being included in the school, or be given opportunities to have a broad education. So there's some questions on that. I think first of all, what's been is a problem to do with lack of staff and resources in the school, that people are kept so long in the learning centres. What's been done to address that? Is this typical of what's happening in the learning centres across the secondary schools, and even in the learning centres in large primary schools? Is that typical? And do we have the resources to continue a policy of inclusion where every child in the school is allowed to flourish by joining the school activities and having a broad and balanced curriculum?
I'll try to unpick that question if that's okay. I suppose the first thing is that we are aware that our secondary schools have moved some way away from where they were when resources were originally devolved to them. And we're doing a piece of work at the moment with the secondary strategy group in terms of looking at the arrangements between the secondaries and with the centre, in terms of making sure that we've got the appropriate provision, and that provision, as you say, Councillor, is appropriate to the needs of the young people. It's important to remember that the majority of our children spend all of their time in the mainstream, and that there are times when we need to make sure that they are supported appropriately. And that's what we're doing with the allocation process this year and going forwards. What we've done is that we've tested out a model in our primary learning centres, which you've referred to the primaries, in terms of doing a formula, so that we actually make sure that we've got enough resource in to support the children in there. We will be then rolling that out into our secondaries as well, and working with them in terms of making sure that our learning centres, as we describe them, and each of our secondaries has a different title for the specialist provision within the school, is working more to a consistent standard and has a consistent staffing ratio in there. With regard to, with regard to transition, I think that as an authority, we've invested many amounts of hours and money in trying to improve transition between primary and secondary. We know all transition points are incredibly crucial for children and young people and sustaining positive progress. There's still work to be done there. I think the communication and sharing of information between primaries and secondaries is something that we will and the rest of the service will continue to support as best as we can.
You want back, Jim? Dick.
Just could we report back on how how Ann Academy's meeting these needs, and how we're dealing with learning centres across the authority at some stage?
I hope that we're referencing in the report that this is a report that's updating you on progress, and we intend to be coming back regularly to update it, and we will be bringing back information on the learning centres, on enrolments, and that if we're establishing enrolment criteria or re-establishing enrolment criteria, we actually clearly have to establish what is a learning centre in the secondary as part of that process. So we're looking at the moment in terms of making sure that we've got good pathways across all of the region, so that a child identified at 2 or 3 that is likely to need additional support in terms of access to a learning centre, that there is a clear pathway and transition through early learning and childcare into primary and into secondary and then into a post-school. So we're looking at that model at the moment, and that's going to raise some issues in terms of accessibility, in terms of have we got the right provision in the right place, and we'll be bringing that back to members, and I think we've suggested to bring that back to members in September.
Katie?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, thank you for all that information. It was something that got brought up at Wigton Area Committee about looking for a clear pathway. And one of the issues was about how to get diagnosis, because I'm aware that not all teachers, although the information may be in a policy here, there and everywhere, not all teachers, some head teachers, even some deputy head teachers, don't always know how to get that. So it was something we've requested at the area committee, that we get back a clear pathway for diagnosis for ASD and also things, dyslexia for learning disabilities. So I really look forward to getting that to come back. I am generally quite a positive person, and there's a lot of negativity around this whole issue, and understandably so, because for individual families and children this is a huge issue and it can cause massive levels of disruption. I just wanted to praise some of our schools, because I'm aware, and obviously I won't go into details, but I'm aware of 2 children within our region in separate regions, separate schools, who are in primary, and the schools are already preparing them for going forward into high school. So there is a lot of positive work going out there, and I'm aware, certainly within my ward, that the high schools are working really positively with our children. So although it's very easy to look at all the negatives, there is actually a lot of positive work happening within our schools. May not be perfect, but we are certainly on the right track. So I'd just like to thank officers and our school staff for really taking this forward. So thank you.
Thanks, Katie. Jim? Thanks, Chair. 3.7 on page 179. How do children qualify for PEF if they don't possess a matrix of need?
Sorry, Councillor, that's my confusion, that you qualify for pupil equity funding through access for a free meal entitlement. So that would be it's an income-related benefit that then arrives at the PEF. What we did was we looked at all of those children that had been identified through the free meal entitlement and whether they had a matrix of need. So we're just cross-referencing. They exist separately, in effect, that a child can be qualifying for PEF and will also have a matrix of need additional support. And when we looked at that figures, we found that I think it was 70%, 70% of that total number of children eligible for PEF in D&G actually had a matrix of need. So we're just trying to make that link between actually poverty and attainment and additional support needs, if that makes sense.
So 30% of the children receiving PEF do not have a matrix of need. Is that correct?
That's correct.
But also the table on the previous page indicates a vast number of children who have a matrix of need but do not appear to get PEF. Is that correct?
That's correct, Councillor. PEF you don't qualify for PEF through having an additional support need. PEF is purely an income-based from free meal entitlement. The additional support needs will affect any child or young person from any demographic group in terms of SIMD. So there's separate means to identify resourcing for children. But actually, when you look at the data, there's a clear connection and correlation between the two groups.
So the PEF money is distributed on financial criteria rather than on educational need?
Yes.
Okay, members, if we move to the recommendations, can we note 2.1, 2.2, agree 2.3, and agree 2.4? Okay. What's next? Yeah, no. I'm just looking at
10.
Or we could move to item 11. Yeah. Just mulling over what, given that we need to be out here by about 1 to 2 to come back again, whether we should take item 11, the John Wallace Trust, first. So what do you, I'll leave it to members. What do you want to do? Move to 10 and then come back? Sorry, move to 11 and then come back to 10? Yes. No. Okay, so if we move to item 11, the John Wallace Trust Scheme. This is the annual report, the John Wallace Trust, which allocates travel grants for schools and bursary for eligible pupils. We are pleased to report that there are more student applications this year. Officers can assure members that all applicants meet the criteria as set. Members? Jim?
Thanks, Chair. You'll see it used to talk about the governors. I do think it's time we move back to that. I will not labour it today, but you know, it's local members, local knowledge. It's just a burden on this committee because most of the members will be intimately aware of the schools. I have a question though, and I appreciate there might be some child confidentiality associated with it, but we used to get a list of the people that qualified, what courses they were on, and what school they were from. So if there's a confidentiality issue that we no longer get that, I'd want to see it anyway, privately, but we can surely illustrate what schools the pupils are from that qualify. I mean, see, we've got 14 new qualifying applications, we've got 12 continuing students, which means there's 26 people from whatever schools. It'll either be Wallace Hall or Sankara Academy. And one of the reasons I ask is, a parent came to me the other day, she'd presented at the reception, asked for an application form for the John Wallace Trust, and the staff didn't know what she was talking about. You know, I've had an assurance in the past from Gillian, and I suppose I'll get it for John too, that we do send information to the schools, but clearly it's not been disseminated to the frontline staff, or at least the one that particular parent approached on the day. So a refresh of the way children are alerted to the fact that this support mechanism's there, and I'd be grateful I could see who was qualified, and maybe in future if there's a... I've not got the appendix. It's not giving the names, it doesn't name the children. That's what I want to know though. And what courses they're on. Thanks, Chair. And the appendix talks about the trips the schools make, what kids qualify for individual support grants.
Just to be clear, Councillor, what exact detail would you like in addition to the information that's contained within the appendix? I'm sure you can provide that.
Normally, John, what we would read would be John Thin, Sankara Academy, Dumfries College, or whatever. That's no here this time, and we've had it in the past. So if it's because of confidentiality, I'd like it privately. But it's just so, because if there are no pupils applying from Wallace Hall or from Sankara Academy, then there's a clear issue that members need to address. And unless we see where the applicants are from, that particular situation will not be addressed. And I'd like John or somebody to alert the schools again that these grants are available for qualifying students, because the parent was quite insistent that she did present at reception and they couldn't help because they weren't aware of the existence of that form.
Yeah, so, thanks, Chair. So my understanding is you're happy with recommendations, but you would like in future to have more detail that indicated the schools that young people were coming from, and in addition, us to refresh the communications going out to schools. Yep.
Thank you. It's individuals as well, John. Colin.
Chair, not for today, but I would like an officer who has legal knowledge to give me what 3.3 exactly means. Now it says here, the area of benefit of the trust comprises the electoral wards as detailed, that part of Dulswinton lying outside the parish of Dumfries, under the etc., and any subsequent extension of the said wards. Well, Dulswinton and Duncow are in Locher ward. Now, the extension of the ward would then be the full Locher area, and schools are being denied access to this as per the reading. Could I have the legal definition as to what that means and whether we should be including other schools within the extended wards?
We'll request that for you, Councillor. Yep.
Jim?
Just on that basis, Chair, we've had this argument before. It didn't bear fruit the last time when we were governors, but I am sure if we were circulated the original document, which some of us have, it'll allow each of us to try and interpret for ourselves what it should say. Because normally these bequests are quite specific and detailed, and they're sometimes very dated. And we've also been advised in the past that there is no way to challenge them legally because of the way they're set up.
Well,
thank you. I just wanted to say from a parent council point of view, when it comes to making parents aware of additional funding that is available, it's very hard to do on a kind of case-by-case basis because you don't want to offend or assume or anything like that. So my suggestion would be if there is information available, it goes in a general to all parents, because that doesn't always happen with the free school meals information that's available for, application forms. Parents are very not keen to be seen to be collecting a form. It's just to highlight it is difficult. I know the schools will have the information, but it's very difficult to get it out to parents in the best way.
Okay, members, getting very close to 2 o'clock. Can we move to the recommendations? Can we agree 2.1, approve 2.2, agree 2.3 and agree 2.4? Okay, so we'll take a short break whilst...